Hello, welcome to Red Thread. We're back with part 2 of the West Memphis Three. We last week we said goodbye to our dear friend Caleb Umperville.
Mm-hmm.
He joined with us for 20 weeks, and now he's flown off to the great beyond, up there with Charlie.
Yeah.
I hear they're partying up there and having fun.
Yeah, it's a shame he died in that candy factory accident.
that tragic candy factory explosion. It got him. This is part 2 of the West Memphis Three, and as a special little addition, we've brought with us my fiance Kira again, who joined us over the holiday break for the 300 million yen heist video. Fan favorite, you killed it, Kira. People really loved you. They wanted you back, so welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. You'll be joining us as more of a backseat producer role, so that if you want to add any information and stuff, you can interject and correct
You're also
us.
welcome to steal the wheel in the front seat anytime you want. You did write the document, so I think
Thank you.
We are just saying your words and stealing.
We
all
are
of
just
your credit.
quoting what you're saying. It's like, back seat, but you also built the car, so it's like,
You guys are the pretty faces, and I'll just if there's anything, I'm just here if you need me.
You are way prettier than both of us combined. So, yes. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way, to everyone out there. That's a good reminder that it's Valentine's Day, or it was. I hope you guys had a good Valentine's Day. Now it's time to get depressing, though, because we've got to continue the West Memphis Three, which we started last week. So that's a good reminder. There's a part 1 to the episode that lays out all the groundwork for this episode. So, go watch that instead if you're just jumping in now, because you really do need all of that information. The initial information about the case deals with the investigation and the actual disappearance of the 3 boys who were later found murdered. And it also covers the backstory of the accused, which were the West Memphis Three: Damien Eccles, Jesse Miskelly, and Jason Baldwin. It's a super contentious case. There's so many different opinions about if they're guilty or not, if the police got the right people. So we did get a lot of comments last week about how we didn't perhaps add a lot of information about why people would still believe that they're guilty. So we wanted to kind of start this episode in quite a lengthy way of going over that and discussing more in detail about the West Memphis Three and why people still believe that they're guilty. Just to give a more broad kind of overview about the case, because this is honestly, I've dived so deep into this in the last week since the part 1 recording, and there was so many opinionated, violently opinionated people on both sides of the aisle. It's like politics almost. It is such a contentious debate between whether or not they're guilty or not. So it's up to you, really, you listening, if you believe that the West Memphis Three are guilty or not. There's no definitive answer. It's kind of just up in the air. So Isaiah, how did you end last week again? What were your thoughts before we really started?
that lady was insane. Whatever her name was, what it was like.
The one who went to the
child.
witch orgy.
Yeah.
She went to a witch orgy undercover, like James Bond, to try to figure it out.
Yeah. I think she's insane. And other than that, I made the opinion that the mentally ill boy, which one was he?
Jesse Miskelly.
Jesse, that he was kind of manipulated. Or just kind of suggested into saying what the police wanted.
So he confessed, but the main argument against that is that he was coerced by the police into giving that.
Yeah, confession. I mean, he was a mentally unwell person who spent 24 hours in an interrogation booth, or 12 hours, however long it was. He'll start.
We'll get to that eventually,
stuff.
but that was actually a point of research that we got wrong last week that we'll need to correct in this one. He was he confessed after 2 hours of interrogation.
Okay.
Which is a pretty big difference in my eyes, but we will get to that eventually.
Yeah.
But people still, like you said, people still believe, and there is kind of evidence suggesting that he was at least the police employed like suggestive tactics in order to get that confession. So I do think that that's still a possible thing that people could argue. But yeah, 2 hours of interrogation and him confessing is far different to him being grilled for like 12 hours, which is what the common argument currently is. Like, I think that changes things quite drastically for me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, if I want to give my opinion right up front, I'm kind of the opinion, I'm leaning towards them being guilty, honestly, from all the evidence that I've read through. There's no physical evidence tying them to it, but there is so many strange little things and kind of circumstantial evidence that makes me think that they're guilty. I don't think, regardless of whatever happens in this episode, I don't think that there's enough evidence to convict them or anything. I think that they're just probably the most likely suspects at this point in time.
Interesting. Okay. All
yeah.
right.
But I don't fault anyone. This is like centrist, me sitting in the fence. I don't blame anyone who thinks that they're innocent, because there is also obviously like not enough proof to convict, like I said.
I believe they murdered 3 children, but it's your opinion if they did it.
It's all up to you, dude. I don't know. It's such a difficult topic, because no matter what you say, you are going to get shit from people regarding it.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah.
So we're going to go deeper into each of the 3 suspects, the West Memphis Three here, to kind of provide information about why people might think that they are guilty, because we didn't really do a great job of that in the last episode. So Isaiah, would you like to start?
Damien Eccles, as we touched on before, had a questionable past before the murders. He apparently tried to drink blood from someone, which is documented in a psychological evaluation that was conducted when he was institutionalized, and he had a lengthy history of being violent towards other patients, as well as having a habit of talking about killing people. We touched on these in the first episode, but there is another story that we didn't have time to include. Starting a year before the murders, in May of 1992, Damien was first referred to a family treatment center for people with possible mental illnesses. There are reports and podcasts online that talk about allegations from Damien's sister, named Michelle, that allege that there was sexual abuse within the family. This abuse stemmed from their father, and from the abuse, it manifested emotional and relationship problems and disorders within the siblings. Damien was seen as someone who regarded himself as someone better than everyone else, stemming from his belief that people don't actually have feelings for one another and that we all just use and harm each other, likely stemming from that alleged abuse against his sister by their adopted father. Damien's mother appeared to be worried and quite scared about her son's possible developing rage, and expressed to caseworkers his inability to handle it.
Yeah, so I think there's actually like there's not testimony, but in the psychological evaluations and stuff, there's witness accounts from her mum and such, talking about kind of how unstable he was at home and how violent his violent tendencies. And I believe that the mother said that she was quite scared of him. So that paints a picture of kind of like the familial life that he was leading at the time. Very unstable individual. He still to this day, even after him being freed, he strikes me as a very weird person. And even people that kind of decry them as being innocent agree with that as well. Like, I saw a lot of comments on Reddit and such of people talking about having met him and thinking that he's probably innocent, but he is a super weird dude in real life. So he's still got that reputation and kind of oddity about him. I guess prison's not going to take that away.
Yeah, regardless if he committed the murders or not, he had a lot of issues. Yeah.
And being weird's not a crime yet.
Being weird in itself is not a crime. I would say trying to drink people's blood.
Well,
I guess
that's awesome. You never went
itself,
through that phase? Being a vampire back in high school? That was awesome.
Well, I'd have to say I missed out on that. I was almost certainly into girls that went through that phase.
Oh, yeah, the goth phase, yeah.
Yeah, which is a elaborate form of self-harm on my part. But that doesn't mean that I ever myself went through that phase. I was always like a bubbly, good little Christian kid. But I
was that why the goth phase was attractive to you? Think the contrast? But actually, no,
if I sat down with a psychologist and like waited out, that probably had some bearing on it. But to this day, I'm a fan of the dark eyeliner, whatever that means. So
there's something there. There's something weird about that level of attraction.
I like things that are bad for me. Yeah.
I think it's normal to be attracted to that. Though it's like there's like a little bit of riskiness and alternative nature to it that makes it kind of attractive. What do you think?
Yeah.
Hey, word from the producer. What do you think, Kira? Are you attracted to goth chicks as well?
Not particularly.
Fair enough. Moving on.
Lame.
I mean, yes.
There we go. Now you're one of the boys.
There you go. That's funny. Yeah, that's
Good
more
bonding
like
experience.
it. Yeah. So beyond that, Damien simply didn't have the cleanest record. Around the time he was first referred to the treatment center, Damien ran away from home with his first girlfriend, Deanna Holcomb. Their parents did not approve of the relationship and insisted they end it, motivated and pushed especially by Deanna's parents, prompting them to attempt to run away to California. At the time, Damien was 17 and Deanna was 15. It wasn't long before they were reported as runaways and found quickly. Damien was angry at Deanna's parents, with evidence suggesting him threatening to kill her dad.
That won't go over well. That won't fix the situation, by the way. If you threaten to kill your girlfriend's dad, I doubt they'd let you be together after that. Not a good solution,
Well,
Damien.
Depends on how good you are at it.
There's a limit to how good you are at it, and that it ends with you actually murdering him.
I feel like there is a point where you actually make them think that you're going to kill him. So it's
Yeah.
like, well, you better date him so that dad doesn't die.
You think you could make the threat so I don't know, like kind of convince the father that you're a strong individual by making the threat. So then
that's what I mean. It depends on how good you are at it.
Yeah, this man will protect my girl.
That's what that one guy did. Oh man, I'm forgetting his name. The guy who got murdered by a whole town. There's a book about it called In Broad Daylight. I forget his name.
Together to murder him.
Yeah, they literally had a town hall meeting, and they're like, someone has to do something about this guy because the police won't. And then they heard he was at a nearby bar, and 30 people walked over to him. Someone shot him, and all 30 said they didn't see anything.
Wow. You have to be so disliked for that to happen. What did this guy do?
Yeah, well, he had went to like a 12, I think she was 12 or 13 at the time, and beat up the father. And it was like, this is going to be my wife. So like he took her as his wife, and then he like burnt down her parents' house. Then he burnt down the houses of a bunch of people around town, and he like beat up a few people and shot a few people's dogs and stuff like that. And he knew the judge and stuff. So every time he got arrested, he would just get out off. So they literally had a town hall meeting where they're like, we have to kill him. So and they did. They shot him in a bar parking lot.
I agree with those moves. That makes sense. I would be down for that. I'd vote yay at that meeting.
Yeah, it's like it's an interesting story. Ken McElroy, that was his name. Yeah,
there we go.
But yeah, it's kind of like if you do that. Mine is the underage part. If you're that mean, like you beat up the dad, and you're like, she's mine now. I guess it works hypothetically.
Well, technically, is also underage. She was 15. I mean, he was 17.
He was 17. They were both underage. Yeah, they're both in high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damien was angry at Deanna's parents, with evidence suggesting him threatening to kill her dad. The pair were found in an empty mobile home in Lakeshore State. Due to their ages, Damien was charged with sexual misconduct on top of burglary, as there had been evidence of sexual activity between the pair. All right, two things. One, what is evidence of sexual activity?
Use condom, maybe. I doubt they were using condoms.
And then, what? In California, is the age of consent in California 17?
I don't think they had made it. They hadn't made it to California at this point. I don't think they had even left the state. I'm assuming.
So whatever state they're in has like a 17-year-old can't be with a 15-year-old. Then
I guess.
I remember reading about this, that when they were found, they were pretty much in the act of doing something.
Oh, okay. Like,
they were banging when they showed up?
They were in the throes of passion, Jackson.
Yeah. Not like 100% sure. There's always so much information like with these sort of things, but I read something that said they were found, being very passionate.
But if that's still not a crime, like they can't barge into a bedroom and see two people making love and then like charge them with sexual misconduct.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If the age of consent is 17 in whatever state it was, then that's a adult with a minor. She was 15. But that would also mean the state didn't have any Romeo Juliet laws. Which is kind of strange,
that's what I would think. Romeo Juliet laws still like an 18
unless
and a
the
15
laws like 1 year. What state was it? Did they get caught in?
See, when I looked up age of consent for Arkansas, it's 16.
Oh,
Okay.
So if they were still there, then
Yes, well then that makes sense. That makes sense. So if the age of consent is 16, she was 15, he was 17, so he's over the age of consent, she's under. And if they didn't have Romeo and Juliet laws, then yes, he's having, illegally having sex with someone underage. I guess they didn't have Romeo and Juliet laws. Yeah, that's weird. For those of you that don't know, Romeo and Juliet laws basically provide leniency or a solution to people who are like, realistically, these two people should be fine to have sex since they were close in age and at probably school together and stuff like that. That shouldn't be treated the same as like an actual case of pedophilia, obviously. So that's why Romeo and Juliet laws exist.
Okay, no, it counts. It says the example used on the Arkansas State website is a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old have consent, but maybe this was before.
This was in the 90s, so who knows?
Yeah,
who knows when they added that? Yeah,
and not to get caught up in the weeds on it, but anyway, Damien denied stealing anything or breaking in, claiming that the mobile home was unlocked and abandoned. Damien apparently later told a psychiatrist that when all of this was happening during the arrest, he thought about grabbing a police officer's gun and shooting Deanna's father. Damien was admitted into psychiatric care 4 times before the murders. Once in June and twice in September of 1992, and then once in January of 93. In a discharge report from Charter Hospital, it's described how Damien was suspended from school at least 7 times as he was impulsive and violent. He would set fires frequently, and he would threaten others often. There's a situation where he attempted to gouge someone's eyes out at one point, and there was also other situations where he physically assaulted other students. The report also talks about conversations that he had with staff that highly concerned them. The worst reported conversation was that he and his girlfriend were going to have a child and then sacrifice it.
Oh, that's huge. That's a big
as well
as
an accusation that Damien had chased a younger child with an axe. So that's a twofer. That's both.
Yeah, that's massive. Wait, so Kira, is that an accusation that the axe chase happened, or were they just talking about it?
The axe chase.
Yeah.
Let me just.
That's kind of insane. So just on a base level though, having a conversation with your girlfriend that you're going to have a child and then sacrifice it is kind of.
That's pretty rough.
That's pretty metal.
That's pretty rough.
That's pretty hardcore. Yeah.
Metal implies a level of coolness to it that I'm not going to attribute to child
What's the
sacrifice.
Negative connotation of metal. It's the negative version of metal.
Pretty
bad metal.
Brutal. You could say
brutal.
Sadistic. Yeah.
Evil.
Yeah. Those count.
If you can't find it, it's all right, Kira.
So what I can see is just quotes of you saying, supposedly Damien chased a younger child with an axe and attempted to set fire to a house. He denied this behavior.
Okay, so it's just an accusation that it happened. Okay.
Damien denied these claims and said that the accusations had come from his girlfriend's parents, who wanted to tear the young couple apart. During this stay at the Charters Hospital, he was formally diagnosed with major depression. So there's nothing even to say that the whole sacrificing a baby thing was 100% confirmed. That's just what her parents said, which are likely a more reliable narrator than him. But
yeah. I mean, he's got a history of the behavior. The parents could be lying, but that seems like such a specific lie as well. Like it seems like something that would be rooted in some level of truth.
Parents talk about like, oh, I'm so afraid my daughter's going to date some scumbag or something. Imagine your daughter dates this guy.
Oh man, yeah. That's horror rough. Story stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was also just her parents that were talking about this. I think that if I'm remembering correctly, like there was a parole officer who pretty much had his eyes set on Damien his entire like teenage life.
I think he was he was there at the Charter Hospital, the hospital that we're talking about right now, and would keep him under eye and watch basically.
If I'm remembering correctly, he also talked about this as well with the child sacrifice.
Attested to those kinds of conversations and such. Gotcha.
Through Damien's multiple assessments, depression was a clear, consistent diagnosis along with suicidal thoughts. He was also diagnosed with something called rule-out psychotic disorder. This is when the patient's symptoms don't necessarily fit into a specific diagnosis profile, and the healthcare professional is looking into possible further testing. There are also a few comments on him potentially aligning with bipolar disorder. Damien actually took a test called MAPI, or the Million Adolescent Personality Inventory. Oh, sorry, not million. The Millen Adolescent Personality Inventory.
Same thing.
Specifically designed to test behavioral characteristics of adolescents. Damien showed impulsive hostility, a distrust for others, and a strong defensiveness, especially against criticism towards him. He showed a want to be powerful, therefore being outwardly aggressive and cold as a way of reclaiming power for himself.
It's not completely abnormal for people who have come from broken homes and where your parents obviously have mistreated you. Although I don't think I think the stepfather sexually abused his sister and not him, just to make that clarification. But still, obviously not a good home setting. And then when paired with the obvious mental health issues, that could obviously lead to a very angry person who wanted to exert power over others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's obviously, we'll have pictures up on the screen here, but there's pictures from the psychiatric report showing all of this basically written out by healthcare professionals at the time. It's very in detail. There's like 300 pages of diagnosis information and psychiatric reporting available that really goes into detail about how mentally unstable Damien Echols was. It's pretty much just a guaranteed thing. It's not up for debate, really, that he was a very documented individual with a troubled teen.
There are also further notes from Charter Hospital that talk about this odd demeanor and how he would apparently mediate in a strange way in his room.
Meditate.
He also appeared... Oh, what did I say?
Mediate. Like he's having...
Man, I am off my game. I forgot how the English language works today. You can tell this was typed in Australian because I can't understand it. He also appeared to have a strange thought pattern, and he appeared to be suffering from paranoia a lot. The report also indicates that personnel would notice that his eyes would move in bizarre ways, like he was reacting to something that wasn't actually there. They took note of unusual poems he wrote, and when he was discharged by his family, he underwent another assessment. He arrived dressed completely in black, and his nails were filed into sharp points, which makes sense given that he would frequently talk of the devil and witchcraft.
I mean, it also just makes sense because he was like an angsty 17-year-old too. Like that wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility. That people dress like that.
To look edgy. Yeah.
Now that's metal.
No, it's metal.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually an important distinction as made evident by the Charter Hospital document. As it states, quote, there was also a question about his involvement with Satanism. Damien, however, indicated that he was not involved with Satanism, but witchcraft.
Yeah, I guess that's an important distinction.
I mean, they are two different things.
Yeah, they are. Fair. But like witchcraft is like way. I feel like witchcraft should be tamer than Satanism, and he feels like a Satanist.
Well, okay, it depends on the flavor of both, right? Because a lot of like there's some witches, quote unquote, or like witchcraft stuff that's like just holistic medicine, like oh, I love the earth and spiritualism, like Wiccan witchcraft or whatever. And there's a lot of Satanism that's just like, yeah, I think God's dead, and I actually like the theme of like loving yourself. But that being said, there's extreme flavors of both, right? There's like necromancy levels of witchcraft, and there's like cutting yourself, praying to goats, Satanism. Like it depends on what part of the staircase you're at on each one. But by and large, I think that witchcraft on average is less intense normally.
Yes. But I wonder how that was in the 90s maybe. Like maybe it's skewed.
It was all the same thing in the 90s, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Yeah, you sure? Like cuz TikTok's
public like okay, so actual witchcraft was not all the same because it's always been different throughout history, but the aesthetics of it, what people thought of witchcraft and Satanism had a pretty much complete overlap.
So you think the aesthetic of witchcraft then is similar to what we have now with like the witches on TikTok and stuff?
Yeah. By witches on TikTok, do you mean the ones that like
talk
like
about,
they wear flowy dresses and set out in the woods, or the ones that like draw pentagrams everywhere and stuff?
Well, they don't draw pentagrams, but I've always seen like posts about how they're doing psychic battles with like like gods and stuff and shit like that.
I'm not familiar with it.
I need to send you some of this. So
I don't think I've seen this before.
They're having like psychic duels with like Satan to keep him banished in the
Okay, all right. I would say that's a different category than anything we're talking about.
It's like the goofy level. That's why I kind of associate witchery or witchcraft like in a kind of goofy way now because
I'm sure that this kid who like has a lot of disorders and stuff like that probably just like the aesthetics. I mean, I could be wrong. I could say in a second that he had like a ritual side at his house. But he probably just liked the aesthetics of it and liked the, the anti-establishment appeal to it and things. And it's probably why a lot of people confuse it for Satanism because it's all just like the edgy anti-society stuff.
Yeah.
Likely. To add detail to the blood sucking that Damien often spoke of, in the charter hospital, another boy had slightly scratched his own arm when Damien suddenly grabbed him and began to suck the blood out. There are various stories on how this played out. Some say he pushed the guy to the ground and told him that he was a vampire. And some tell the story of him sucking at the guy's neck, and there's another that states that the boy was attempting to kill himself. We don't really know the story here. It seemed the story grew and grew, and in the end, it seemed he did admit to drinking blood somewhat frequently. However, Damien maintained that it was mainly from his partner or an otherwise consenting friend.
What did you call it when I asked you about that, Kira? You said it was like he had a blood boy or something?
Yeah, I feel like I remember reading Blood Brother or something blood like brother, that. It seemed like maybe...
I like Blood Boy better. Yeah, Blood Boy. This is my Blood Boy.
Maybe a friend and they had like a pact or something.
Mm-hmm. I don't think this is inherently wrong, isn't that? There's like there's a millionaire at the moment that's sucking blood from his,
I was going to mention
18-year-old son or whatever to stay young.
He does
20 years too early.
Plasma transfusions, I think, between his son and himself.
Yeah, I was on board until they started comparing boners the other night on Twitter. They were posting about like the strength of their sleep boners, basically. Like they're comparing.
For me, so to me, he's so evil that it's funny.
That it's the blood transfusion guy.
It's the equivalent. Yeah, it's the equivalent of like Jeff Bezos being like, I destroyed a quarter of the rainforest to build a swimming pool.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, this is like a cartoon character, and him being like,
sucking the juice from my son to stay alive.
I'm trying to stay young
minutes.
forever by doing blood transfusions with my son. Like, yeah.
Like, it is cartoonishly.
It's so cartoonishly evil that I'm like, good on you, man.
You know what?
Funny. Keep going.
This is circling around from being just evil to being funny evil. And that's
like you're not even trying to hide it. He called him his blood boy in a tweet, I swear.
Yeah. That's probably where I got the term from.
It's like at the point where you look at your son and you're like, come here, blood boy, make me young. Like,
serve up dinner.
Yeah. But yeah, Damien had a blood boy, it would seem.
Yeah. He created the trend.
However, Damien maintained that it was mainly from his partner or an otherwise consenting friend. He stated that it, quote, made him feel like a god and that it would give him superpowers. When he was admitted, it was also reported that he wanted to commit suicide. He possibly had a pact with Dina. He was not afraid of this because he thought he could just come back through something akin to reincarnation. He actually attempted suicide after he was arrested by saving up and storing antidepressant medication, and he had been prescribed and then taking them all at once that he had been prescribed. Mm-hmm. However, perhaps coming to his senses, he immediately notified the staff of the jail what he had done. Suicide note reads, quote, Dear Mom and Dad, just remember I am a Wiccan and will be reincarnated. I promise. Love you very much. You know I was innocent. I will find you, even in spirit. Just make sure you always remember that I love you no matter what. End quote. The quote about Wiccan implies he may have actually known what he was talking about with the witchcraft thing other than just the aesthetics, because Wiccan's a bit more specific, right?
It's a technical term, yeah.
It's a technical term, exactly.
Yeah. Reincarnation as well, is that like a pretty big part of Wiccan culture and stuff?
I don't know. Wiccanism is the whole belief that like there's like all these lesser spirits and entities and stuff that you can summon or call upon. So I'm sure, I don't know of it being a major part of it, but I'm sure reincarnation fits in there somewhere. And if it doesn't, let's also keep in mind the individual we're talking about. He's not exactly balanced, right?
I don't like the idea of reincarnation, by the way. I don't find that a very comforting thought, reincarnation.
Seems very inconvenient.
Yes, because there are so many things you could be reincarnated as. And plus, like, how is it necessarily comforting knowing that you're going to be reincarnated? Because once you're reincarnated, you don't have any memory of your previous life. So, I don't know. It's
effectively you die, like you as you understand yourself die, and you reset. And I also don't like it because it implies that like everything that happens on Earth right now is the whole point. It's as good as it gets, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. I'm not crazy about it. It's a weird idea.
Neither.
He would also harm himself by cutting and burning his skin, and he would tattoo himself also. He had a history with drugs as well, trying a lot of different kinds, including but not limited to weed, speed, cocaine, acid, gasoline, propane, and spray paint. Wow.
That jumped up quite drastically at the gasoline point. If you're doing gasoline to get high.
We started at weed and ended with spray paint.
Yeah. I think I remember the original list here that you had, Kira, included tobacco and alcohol, and I kind of removed them for the effect because I feel like that was a bit too tame.
I mean, we can assume that beer and cigarettes is in here somewhere. Like,
no, he's on the straight and narrow apart from weed, speed, cocaine, acid, gasoline, propane, and spray paint.
Exactly. In California
cheat
sober,
day.
they call it. Yeah. Yeah, I remember there were some people from back in like Kentucky who would get high on wasp spray. So they would take wasp spray,
like spray that kills wasps.
Yeah, spray that used to kill wasps, and they would take a screen door and they would spray it over the screen door, and then if you left it for a while, it would dry and harden. And then they would beat the screen and like the dried flakes of wasp spray would fall out and they would snort those.
Oh my God, dude. What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, to keep in mind, these are people who are like covered in scabs and meth bugs and
probably from that.
Completely amped up all the time. Yeah. Like,
or they might have just been getting bit I feel by like you've got to they ran out of spray to kill the wasps.
I feel like you've got to try every other drug that exists before you move to wasp spray.
Yeah, that's
you've done
that's
PCP,
a level of desperation.
You've done heroin.
Yeah. You've run out. That's crazy.
Also, extreme poverty, of course. Like
if you need to get high and you've got no money and stuff. Obviously,
I also feel like you don't get high on wasp spray and hold down a well-paying job. I feel like that those two things are antithetical to each other.
Or any drug abuse, really.
Yeah, I did see. I saw a post earlier from it was like r/addicts or some Reddit group. A guy posted a picture of him with spider spray, and next to the spider spray can was poop on his bed, and like human poop, and the caption said. Every time 11 huffs, I'm fine. 12 puffs, here comes the poop man.
He's got it down to a science. He knows exactly how many it takes.
Every time on the 12th hit of spider spray, here comes the poop man.
I'm so happy I live the life that I lead where I'm not shitting on my bed.
It could always be worse. Like wherever you're at, it could be worse.
Those subreddits, those drug subreddits,
they're insane.
Built around drugs and stuff are actually insane. I'm not talking about like r/trees, which is like weed and stuff. But sure, there's like crack cocaine ones where people are like talking about.
There's r/meth
and stuff. Yeah, meth. That's so funny.
There's r/meth where they talk about like how they hit it, how they have to hide and stuff. And anytime someone's like, "I think I'm getting off of it. I think I'm leaving," guys. Everyone else is like, "Boo,
you suck, do meth." It's like a weird level of community.
Yeah, you're not going to abandon us, are you? Yeah. Anyway, but back to this guy who's doing propane and gasoline. He did say he stopped using drugs except for tobacco as it messed with his religion and practices. This obviously all paints Damien as a very unstable person with violent tendencies and urges. His mental health issues are all documented through psychological evaluations and are available to the public. Another interesting aspect of Damien is that of the alibi. Damien is quoted as saying, quote, "At that time, the police say the murders took place. I was actually on the phone with 3 different people. The problem was my attorneys never called them to the stand." However, It is posited that they weren't called because it would have exposed Damien's alibi as a lie. Damien claimed that he talked to Holly George during that evening. However, she claimed that they spoke much earlier in the afternoon, around 3 p.m.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure the police claim that the murders took place between 6 p.m. sometime between 6 p.m. and I think 8 p.m. roughly.
Okay.
Just from the what do you call it when they examine the body?
Autopsy.
Autopsy report. Yep.
Damien also claimed that he had spoken to Heather Plea during that evening. However, she claimed that she had been unable to reach him until 10:30 p.m. and further added that Holly had told her that Damien had been out walking around. Damien's girlfriend, Dominique Tier, said she last saw Damien around 5 to 5:30 and that she didn't speak with him until 10 p.m. that night. And finally, Jennifer Bearden told police that she had called Jason's home between 4:15 and 5:30, where she then talked to Jason and Damien for 20 minutes. Damien told her that he and Jason were going somewhere and to call him back at 8 p.m. However, when Bearden called Damien's house at 8 p.m., only his grandmother answered, and she told Bearden that Damien wasn't there. Bearden told police that she only reached Damien around 9:20 p.m. Jesse had no alibi either, and Jason Baldwin attempted to get his brother and friend, Ken Watkins, to lie for him by creating an alibi. However, this went nowhere. 2008, his lawyer said that he couldn't find a reliable alibi witness for Jason, so all three seemingly had no alibi during the 4 to 5 hours that coincided with the murders.
That's when that is absolutely very interesting, and it's something that I see glossed over a lot.
It's kind of suspicious. Now, I will say that the lack of an alibi alone doesn't.
No, but it's all three of them not
guilty.
having an alibi, as well as the amount of time where they're unaccounted
But it is suspicious.
For. Yeah. And it's also several of them tried to lie about it, like very clearly.
It's also, at the same time though, it's like, okay, for like the first 8 hours of every day, I'm just home alone, right? Like working on videos, doing
That's
whatever.
what you say. You could be out murdering, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah. So what happens if the police come and they're like, where were you yesterday from 10 a.m. to lunch? I'd be like, at home. And they're like, do you have anyone to prove it? I'm like, no. Like, I was just at home by myself.
It is
like,
a scary concept, not having an alibi and knowing. Like, I can't imagine being in that situation where like they're like, do you have an alibi for this time? And you're like, fuck, I was at home in my underwear watching reruns of American Dad.
Exactly.
How am I going to prove that to them?
Exactly. Like,
what do you do?
It's like, what were you doing that time? And I'm like, nothing, because I was at home in my underwear watching.
Yeah. The good thing is, though, you should have enough cameras around your house that should like secretly record you.
They should show that I didn't leave, I guess. But if I'm just inside all day, the police could be like, well, maybe you, I don't know, crawl through a window. Something like,
I guess you could like say you're sitting there and you're like Googling stuff. You could like request that your ISP, your internet service provider or something, sends those records that shows you were at home on a computer,
suppose.
Maybe. But then I guess the police could also argue that could be anyone, like that could be someone else doing that.
It's a likely story. You played Escape from Tarkov for 14 hours straight. It's
look at my Steam profile. Yeah.
Don't make this worse than it has to be. Just yes, I was.
Yeah, it's definitely a scary concept though. Not being able to prove that you weren't where you say you were or whatever, where they say you were.
Yeah, especially because like you also got to remember this is the 90s. There'd be no way to prove that, like internet browsing or anything. But nowadays, you are right; it would be a little bit easier hypothetically. Isn't the NSA watching me? Don't they have a camera on me at all times?
Yeah,
Can't they've
got a whole file on you. Don't worry, you're fine. They know exactly where you are.
Ask my agent who watches me. Once again, set naked in my underwear, playing Escape from Tarkov for 14 hours.
That's all.
He'll testify.
Like 12 hours a day.
Yeah, we subpoena him and call him up to the stand.
So I attest that he was there in his underwear for 12 hours straight, playing Tarkov.
Let the record show he sat there unmoving, went to the bathroom twice, and grunted 4 times. Other than that, catatonic completely.
Yeah, completely good. But yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, for me, that is a pretty big point that they were all three unaccounted for.
Yeah, there's no alibi.
Free period of time, and it's also like I could buy it if if they didn't then lie about it, like Damien's own lawyers didn't bring the alibis up, like these people that he claimed he talked to, because each of those persons testified that they didn't talk to him at the time that he said they did. That's pretty big.
What makes it most suspicious to me is like it's one thing to be like, no, I don't have an alibi. It's another to try to get your friends to lie about an alibi.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially suspicious.
It's very suspicious. There was this isn't in here, but this is an anecdote about Jesse Miskelly. Apparently there was a testimony that he was at a wrestling event at the time of the murders, and some people corroborated that, but it was later found out that that was either misrepresented by those giving the alibi, or it was like they misremembered the date, basically, because there were pictures of that event from earlier on, basically, not on that day. So that's up for debate as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Just want to throw that in.
Damien has also been shown to have lied in several interviews. For example, in a Larry King interview in 2010, he claimed, quote, "I live 15 miles away from West Memphis and the crime scene," when he actually lived in a trailer park in West Memphis, which was less than 2 miles away from the crime scene. Another such interesting lie is that Damien claimed, again in 2010, that I wasn't familiar with Robin Hood Hills before the murders. It was a residential area, and I only went to West Memphis to go to Walmart and stuff. However, in 1994, he answered that question by saying that he visited Robin Hood Hills 2-3 times a week, probably more. He also told Piers Morgan that the prison had forced him to eat with his hands. And upon release, quote, he had to learn to use a fork again, which detractors point to as evidence that Damien is not the most honest person ever. I mean, yeah, it's been well established that he has like multiple mental illnesses. I don't even know if he's aware that he's lying all the time. It's probably within reason to say if he is, then he's a compulsive liar, which again, Damien is definitely the type of person to murder somebody. And he's not trustworthy, not a good guy or anything like that. But without other stuff stacked behind it, that doesn't necessarily mean he committed the murders. Yeah.
Yes. I could, like I said earlier, like I could see him being the murderer, and that's why I don't fault people for thinking that they are potentially still guilty. And as I said, my bias leans towards that as well. But again, there's just not enough evidence to for me to say definitively that they are guilty and deserved to be convicted. Like there needed to be more physical evidence and such in order to bolster that claim, in my opinion, because it needs to be beyond a shadow of doubt or whatever for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's like I don't know, like it provides reason but not evidence. Yeah.
Real quick, a quick word from our sponsors of this episode. Over to me. We're big fans of doctors here at Red Thread. They're awesome to go and meet up with. Everyone likes to do it. That's why ZocDoc makes it as easy as possible to set up an appointment with them, so you can get in there and meet up with your perfect doctor as quickly as possible with no friction, no issues. When you're sick, the last thing you want to do is spend, 20 minutes on the phone with a receptionist trying to figure out if the local doctor has time to see you. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment with them. That's right, we're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty. That's a lot of doctors waiting for you to make a meeting with them. You can filter them by ones who take your insurance, are located nearby, and sort them by those highly rated by verified patients, which means you can easily find your perfect doctor. Once you find that perfect doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. No calling around to all the clinics in your area to see if they have an opening desperately. It's all visible and easy to check on ZocDoc. Let's put it this way. If I was sick right now and I needed to make a date with a doctor, I'd use ZocDoc. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/redthread to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/redthread, also linked below in the description. ZocDoc.com/redthread. Meet up with a doctor. ZocDoc is a free service to make your doctor's bookings. I highly recommend using it. Go check it out. Links below. Thank you, ZocDoc. Now back to the episode. So what about Jesse's past? Well, Damien may have had a more complex, dark past. Jesse wasn't clean either. He was known to be a bit of a hothead and would often get into fights at school and would often bully kids younger than him. He eventually dropped out of school, and in the police interrogations, he talked about animal cruelty, things like killing a dog, knowing how to handle the meat, and eating part of the leg. He said that this was all to get into a cult, and if you couldn't do that, you couldn't join the cult. So we have another transcript here. I'll read from Gitchell if you want to go for Jesse. Okay, so Officer Gitchell says, okay, now you have participated in this cult, right?
Yes.
How long have you been involved in it?
I've been in it for about 3 months.
Okay, tell me some of the things that you all do typically in the woods as being in this cult.
We go out, kill dogs and stuff, then carry girls out there.
And what do you do with the girls when you're out there?
We screw them and stuff.
Just everybody takes a turn?
Everybody. And we have an orgy and stuff like that. Okay.
Wait, why are you smiling?
I don't appreciate you all orchestrating the first half of the document to be like, well, Jesse was a misunderstood guy that the police, like, even if he's making this stuff up, this is pretty rough.
Well, that's what I was saying last week. Yeah, like, the stuff that
this is your fault, Kira. We got her here. We can corner her now. This is your doing.
Yeah, killing a dog. It's too far. I hate that.
Well, I mean, did he actually do? Is there any evidence he did this stuff besides what he's saying right here?
There is evidence that there were dog sacrifices. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's pretty. I would say that's pretty big reason. Dog sacrifices to say that some of this cult in the woods, maybe even tying up girls stuff would be.
Well, they didn't tie. I don't know if they tied up the girls. Just for clarification, they just.
Well, they sacrifice dogs. That's pretty outside of the realm of what most people would do. If
I want to say the evidence for this, and we might get into it later in the document. I'm not sure. Is that there was a dog skull found, I believe, in Damien's bedroom.
Yes.
Okay. Well. Okay.
Yeah. What's your thought? What's your thought?
Well, that's different. That's different than evidence of dog sacrifice. Because
so you think that's not enough with Jesse saying that?
No, I don't think it is, because Damien is a self-proclaimed Wiccan, and the big things, like a lot of their rituals and stuff, is like taking bird bones or taking animal pieces and like sprinkling them around, or like appealing to the positive spirits inside of them and stuff like that. There's nothing to say that Damien didn't find a dead animal. And again, Damien has a lot of issues. There's nothing to say Damien didn't find a dead animal and keep the skull for like part of his Wiccan practices. That's very different from finding and killing a dog, right?
Yeah. But then
I've got friends who they'll go out in the woods.
Jesse still said, we go out, kill dogs and stuff. And this wasn't things.
You're right.
This wasn't such a thing where Gitchell or Detective Gitchell led him to say that either. Like,
you're right. You know what? You're right. You're right. That he did come up with that one on his own. He wasn't pushed into it.
Yeah. There's no level of coercion there in my eyes.
The dog skull is circumstantial evidence then.
Yeah.
I would. Yes. An interesting note on this particular police confession is that during the conversation, Jesse recalls that Damien and Jason were potentially fooling around in the water at the hills just before the murders took place.
Okay, so this is Detective Ridge again.
Wait.
What's up?
Fooling around. Oh, the next conversation is going to be about that. Sorry.
Yes.
I was about to ask for clarification on what fooling around meant, but we're going there.
So this next little transcript here, we're going to be fooling around. Ridge says, Detective Ridge says, were you all having sex?
No, I wasn't.
You weren't.
No.
Damien and Jason having sex?
They took turns going up under the water.
You sound like more of a detective than I do.
Well, I'm trying to throw like a southern drawl into like they took turns going up under the.
Are you doing that so no one can clip your voice saying potentially compromising things in a second?
I was doing it to get into the character, but now that you've said that, I'm going to throw the voice even harder. Yeah.
It's a good point. They took turns going up under the water. Okay. Going up under the water, what were they doing up under the water?
They're sitting so far away, they're in the water. I'd say about 5 to 10 seconds. They come up and then the other one would go down. Ugh.
I'm not quite sure what that means. Like,
I know what it means. You know exactly what it means.
Well, it doesn't mean blowjobs under the water. Is that what it means?
Yes, that's what it means. Yes.
Okay. So they were just messing around in the water. They called for these boys to come over there.
Yeah, they seen them boys, then they hollered. Damien said, "Hey, little boys, come up there."
Did they call them by name?
No, they just hollered at them. They slowed down.
Where did the boys put their bikes?
Close to right where they're before you come in, and they laid them down right there. And after I left, I don't know what they done with the bikes.
Okay, so they're saying that, Jesse is claiming that they were fooling around in the water, and then the victims, the boys, showed up, and that's when Damien and Jason called them over to the lake or the little waterway, whatever it was. So on the case against podcast, they detail situations where Jesse was threatening and abusive towards others, like hitting a girl who had previously spread a rumor that insinuated that he was sexually active with her. She was only 13. And another where a boy who was 14 at the time alleged that in 1992, he had heard Jesse, Damien, and Jason and other friends coming up from behind him when Jesse shoved the boy and then threatened him with a knife pressed against his throat. Again, these alleged events certainly also portray Jesse as being a violent and unstable teenager with his own mental issues. Jesse confessed a total of 5 times across different occasions, including in front of his own lawyer, who was basically begging him to shut up. And I've read all the transcripts for each of these what do you call them, confessions. And yeah, like the lawyer was basically in lawyerly way, basically trying to get him to shut up desperately during that confession. So it is quite odd. And this is just the 5 main confessions. Apparently, he had confessed multiple times before that to friends. He had confessed multiple times after that to cellmates. There was even an anecdote that we found very late into the research process where an ardent defender of the West Memphis Three visited Jesse in prison and wrote to him a lot. And she, through that process, actually became convinced that they were guilty and stopped talking to Jesse because he said something that really tipped her off basically, and she just stopped. She left the internet basically at that point, which is very interesting in my opinion. So the 5 main confessions though are June 3rd, 1993, which is the first recorded confession. Then again June 3rd, 1993, which is after the initial confession. Miss Kelly gave another statement when police took him to different locations related to the crime. This is the confession that is broadly criticized for the alleged coercion, and the investigators needed to do that second confession or interrogation with Jesse because when they took his first confession to the judge presiding over the situation at the time to receive a warrant to investigate the West Memphis Three's premises and things like that, the judge said that there wasn't enough evidence, or there were, components of the first confession that didn't line up. So he asked them to, do the second interrogation to clear things up, which they did, and then they were successfully able to get the warrant. But this is the one that's very criticized for the coercive elements of it. And if you read through it, yeah, the cops are definitely suggesting or using suggestion to coerce certain elements out of Jesse, probably in order to make sure that the story lined up with facts so that they could then get the warrant through the judge, which depends on how you look at it. Yeah, a very sketchy situation and probably another point of evidence against the West Memphis Police Department for being very bad at their jobs. The third confession is February 4th, 1994, which is where Miss Kelly briefly confessed again to his own lawyer. Then again on February 8th, 1994, which was right before his trial, he confessed again to police detectives while in the presence of his attorney, Dan Stidham. This was not used in court. And then August 19th, 1994, after being convicted, Miss Kelly confessed yet again to investigators while in the car transporting him to prison. So a lot of confessions, and again, a lot of people think that because of his low IQ, what was his IQ at, Kira? Something like in the 70s?
Yeah, I think it was
70 something.
Yeah. I remember there were multiple IQ tests done, and I did see some rumblings online about how the lawyer may have advised him of the consequences of scoring lower on the IQ test, as in you would be able to avoid the death penalty. So that may have impacted him potentially faking the IQ test. But I've seen enough people talking about how he's very actually visibly mentally deficient when they're talking to him and stuff. So I believe that he's a low IQ individual. I've seen reports of him being in the 70s and 80s, which is still well below average. So yeah, I still agree that he's a low IQ individual, and people insinuate that due to that, the coercive elements of the interrogations would have been more successful because he didn't have the brain faculty available to kind of think rationally, basically. So people use that against these 5 confessions, which I don't know how I feel about it. Again, I do think that there were suggestive elements, like I said, used by the police. I don't think they did a good job, but again, he confessed 5 times, and there were a lot of details in there that line up with things. How do you feel about it, Isaiah?
Oh no,
it's so
the
hard,
stuff about the animal sacrifices and stuff. Like, sure, it could have been suggested to him that he needs to do those things because that was the case. Sure, it just could have been mentally unwell. I don't know. Like you said at the beginning, there's so much circumstantial evidence that maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's so difficult to come to an actual conclusion about. Yep. So the fact of the matter is there are a lot of inconsistencies in information Miss Kelly undeniably gets wrong across these confessions, and this is why the police had to go back and kind of reinterrogate him. For example, Miss Kelly had claimed that the victims had been sexually assaulted in the first couple of confessions, but he then changes this element of the story in the August 19th confession. So we're going to show this comparison right here. Confession 1, Detective Ridge says, "Okay, what occurred while you were there?" And then Miss Kelly replies,
"When I was there, I saw Damien hit this one boy real bad, and then he started screwing him and stuff, and then we jump to confession 5, which was 7 months later. June. Well, about a year later. Confession 5, Detective Davis, a different detective, says, "Okay, you said that he was going to screw the little boy or stick his penis in his behind. What did you see Damien do?" They didn't do it. He was going to do it, then they didn't.
Okay, so yeah, they're a pretty big inconsistency there.
Big difference. I will say both of those imply that in both versions of the confession there is some sexual violence. If he was about to do it, then didn't, or something. So that's not like open and shut, 2 different stories. But yeah.
But there are examples of these inconsistencies throughout the confessions, and a lot of them can be thought of like you just said, basically, like maybe it's just Jesse misremembering or wording things incorrectly. Like he still knows what happened, but it's impossible for him to be sure. So then there's different recountings of events for him. I will note he was also heavily drunk at the time, according to himself. So that could also change things. Regardless, it would take a very long time to go line by line through the interrogations and confessions to pinpoint each inconsistency. But this is to say that they obviously do exist, and there is certainly evidence of police guiding Jesse to the answers that they wanted, particularly in those first 2 confessions. Whether or not this means that Jesse is innocent is just, it's impossible to say, and so difficult. Is it possible that his inconsistencies are due to a murderer, grappling with his guilt, or a desperate desire to receive a lighter sentence? Of course. Is it possible that Jesse is a borderline mentally handicapped individual who was taken advantage of by law enforcement and, due to his misunderstanding of how the legal world operates, confessed to something he wasn't a part of 5 times because of that? Also definitely possible. It's so impossible to know. I've flip-flopped between both over and over again. I just don't know. Jesse recanted. However, one additional interesting note on Jesse and his many confessions is that on February 8th, during his confession to his attorney, so during confession 4, he actually offered proof that he had witnessed the murders. He told his attorney, Stidham, that he was drunk on whiskey during the murders and that they could find the broken bottle on the ground under a bridge in West Memphis. He claimed he had smashed the bottle there after leaving the crime scene out of anger for what he had witnessed. Stidham claimed that he would be forced to believe his client's confession if the bottle was found. Stidham, West Memphis Police Department, and the prosecutors drove to the location, and they found the broken whiskey bottle in the exact area that Jesse claimed it would be. Whether or not this serves as proof of his confession being accurate is up to you, of course. Each person will have a different belief about these confessions and whether or not they hold up to scrutiny. The only way for you to really be able to have a full and complete understanding of them, and even then you still won't because I don't, is to read the transcript for each of them and come to your own conclusion. Him with the bottle is interesting. Like he obviously had material. Like that's such a weird thing to say, if you go here, you'll find a bottle that I smashed, and they went there and it was the exact brand of whiskey. That's pretty interesting, right?
Was it the same brand he said it would be?
Yes, everything was exactly as he had said it.
Yeah, there was a liquor store nearby that they took the shards to and double checked against a like new clean bottle, and it matched.
Mm.
I mean, it's possible that it's possible that he broke the bottle on a different day. But again, why would you use that as like he's trying? The point is, Jesse's trying desperately to prove that his confession is legit.
If he would be trying to prove the confession's legit because he's getting. Wait, did he get a plea deal? Was he told he was getting a plea deal?
No, he didn't receive. This was after he was found guilty, I believe.
Okay, then maybe I don't know why I would fake it. Then you're right.
Wait, no, confession 4. No, sorry, confession 4 is before the trial.
Okay,
but
so
yeah,
I don't know, man.
A plea deal from that.
I don't know if you. If any one of these things was by themselves, like if there's just the same whiskey bottle, I'd be like, okay, that could be a coincidence. You know, like I could name like half the bridges around town and say there's probably a bottle of Fireball.
Exactly.
You know, around them because people go down there and drink. But it's like it in combination with so many other things. There's so many, like you said, so much circumstantial. And if he was there getting drunk and smashed the whiskey bottle, and that means he was there on that day to witness what these two were doing. It's like, okay, well, why would he, if all of that was true and if he seems to be reliable there, then why make up that these two people murdered these 3 boys, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't understand the point of him desperately trying to prove the veracity of his claims unless he genuinely felt remorseful and guilty for what
now I aim my anger at Kira for deciding to make the first document so apologetic, if you would.
Hey, I got to keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That first document was like, they coerced this mentally ill man into this innocent boy. And now it's well, actually, you're wrong. Actually.
Well, when you first look into it, you find all this information and then you dive deeper and you find so much more. So...
Mm-hmm. To White Knight for my queen over here, there really is so many people online that fervently push the ideas that they're innocent. That it is just so many conflicting views and so much evidence that they point to. It is overwhelming, and it's a lot of information to dive deep into and to try to. And what we're trying to do here is provide both sides of the coin as best we can. We did, like you said, we offered a pretty apologetic and innocent-based argument in the first episode, and now we're kind of doubling back to offer the alternative viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Jesse recanted shortly after every single time he confessed, from the very first one where he told his family he'd been forced by the police to tell the story he had told, to saying the officers in the car of the 5th confession said that they couldn't use the information against him in court. He then consistently over many years has claimed that all of his confessions were false. It's a complicated web of confession, recanting, confession, recanting. His confessions did not seem to stop, however, as a letter dated October 24th, 1994 was sent to the prosecutor by Jesse's cellmate claiming that Jesse would not stop confessing to him. Would you like to read this quote?
Yeah, so Mr. Brent Davis, I am forwarding this letter to your office simply because you were the only prosecuting attorney that I was able to get the address of. After reading this, I hope you will bring it to the attention of the appropriate persons. I may have some useful information for the prosecution in the upcoming appeal of Jesse Misskelley, who, as you may know, is one of the 3 defendants accused of murdering the 3 young boys in West Memphis. I have known Misskelley since June 9th, 1994. We are currently housed together in the ADC Diagnostic Unit, Special Programs Unit. At several different occasions, Misskelley and I have talked extensively about many facts of the case. Among them, Miss Kelly told me that they, the defendants, cut the testicles of one of the children off.
Which wasn't corroborated by the autopsy report, by the way. I don't think.
Wasn't there some kind of mutilation to them?
There was mutilation to the penis. Kira, can you fact check me here? I'm pretty sure that it was just the penis, though.
Let me double check.
Yeah, you can continue reading while she has a look.
Well, that wouldn't change it, because if Jesse's story is that he walked away as it was happening, maybe he thought they were doing that.
Yeah,
and then it was just a different injury. Yeah. Jason Baldwin, one of the defendants, had sex with one of the children after he had been killed, and that Damien Eccles, one of the defendants, said a prayer before they threw the boys in a ditch. Miss Kelly also told me that they, the defendants, left a nightgown at the scene so that it would look like women had committed the crime. He says now that he is trying to blame the parents of one of the children. Miss Kelly also told me that his confession is the only evidence that the prosecution has, that he and his attorney are trying to have that dismissed. I once asked Miss Kelly what were the names of the three boys. He laughed for some time and then said he could only remember one of them. Mr. Davis, please do everything in your power to keep Miss Kelly behind bars for the rest of his life. He's a very cold, morbid person. I thank you for your time, Michael Johnson.
Don't know. It could just be a fake, it could be anything.
So I could see on Oxford official site that the genitals were badly mutilated, essentially castrated.
Mm-hmm.
Can see, scrotum and penis were mutilated. That's what's coming up.
Okay, so saying castrated is that's like next door to it. That's fine.
Yeah,
I can understand.
if it's close enough. Yeah.
Also,
and like you said, he was drunk at the time. Jesse claims that he was very drunk at the time, and also he left during the ordeal. Like he wasn't there for most of it, so he could have seen it as he was leaving, and that's what his brain filled in the gaps, basically. I don't know. Also, as a very important addendum to last week's episode, we stated that Jesse Miskelly had confessed after a 12-hour-long interrogation. This was incorrect. He had arrived, and this is something that I see online in the pro-innocent camp a lot, is people pointing to the 12 hours. I'm not sure where this started from, but it's entirely incorrect. I read the timesheets provided by the police in the hard evidence, hard evidence files, basically. There's a repository online of all of them. Like, these are police documents, proven. He had arrived at the police station at 10 a.m. to undergo the polygraph test and provide samples for the investigation. And then at 11 a.m., 11:56 to 12:30 p.m. he took the polygraph test, but it was only at 12:40 p.m. that the police interrogation began, after the polygraph test had returned an indication that Jesse was lying or being deceptive. He then confessed at 2:20 p.m., that first confession, and the police investigators claimed that only around 2 hours, roughly, of that time was interrogation. This can be shown below and on screen right now, just so people don't claim that we're lying. That show the time-stamped police document. This throws into question the claim that the 12 hours of intense police grilling had a material impact on Jesse, as a 12-hour interrogation simply did not happen, as Jesse confessed relatively quickly after failing the 30-minute long polygraph test. That's definitely, this was when my brain started flipping over to the bias that, they're potentially guilty, because I had seen that claim of the 12-hour long interrogation all over the internet. And if that's the kind of evidence that side is pushing, and it's just demonstrably wrong, as proven by police documents, it definitely threw a lot of things into question for me. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Weird. So, all right, on to Jason Baldwin, the third suspect.
Yes.
Jason also had a past with the police starting when he was 12. He, along with a group of other boys, including his brother, broke into a garage where cars were being stored. They went on to break windows and jump on the cars, badly damaging them. 2 men caught them in the act and called the police, who arrested them for breaking and entering and causing mischief. A few years later, when he was 15, he was again arrested for stealing around $7 worth of snacks from a nearby store. Life at home was not a great one for Jason either, His mother was dealing with several mental issues, and his father, who was mainly absent from his life, had just re-entered the picture. Jason's mother attempted suicide around this time, and Jason was the one to find her and keep her alive while the paramedics were en route.
That is rough.
That's rough, yeah. In other writings, Jason had talked about bottling up anger and then exploding, fighting, and choking his younger brother. He was quite antisocial, angry, and had begun to adopt tendencies from Damien, who he saw as a cool figure. He was still in school at the time of the arrest and was seen as a relatively high achiever. There doesn't seem to be much else available on Jason Baldwin. However, a necklace was found in Damien's possession that was found to have blood on it. Tests proved that the DNA was consistent with Damien and Jason, as well as Stevie Branch, one of the victims. Wait, they found a necklace on him that had the blood from one of the boys on it?
The same blood type, which is like 11% of the population.
Again, circumstantial, but in combination with everything else, yeah. However, this was discovered too late to be admitted in the eventual trial, and the defense, during conversation with the prosecution and judge about whether or not that should be allowed into the trial, contested that the fact that Jason and Stevie had the same blood type as well as 11% of the population, okay, what I just asked, and indeed each other, arguing that this didn't appear to be relevant to the case, saying, I think it's our position that if it's Jason Baldwin's, if it's consistent with DNA with Jason Baldwin and also Branch, that it may be not relevant at all. Part of our defense in this matter would be that sometime during the time period, approximately a month or two before the arrest, that besides my client, Eccles, having access to this pendant, that also Jason Baldwin had access to this pendant. If that is indeed Jason Baldwin's blood on this pendant and not Stevie Branch's, then this evidence is of no value at all and not relevant. It should be excluded and not considered by the jury at all.
So that was defense's argument. Their argument was basically because the DNA evidence shows that the blood type on the pendant is conclusive with both Jason Baldwin and also Stevie Branch because they had the same blood type. It wasn't it wasn't a very specific blood type DNA match because they didn't have the.
So it could just be his own blood.
It could have been Jason Baldwin's blood.
Okay,
yes,
okay, I see.
Yes, it could have just been his.
I see.
Yeah, which was what their argument was because Jason was around the pendant for the few months before that. It's not
okay.
relevant.
All right. Well, then that. Okay, I see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So now we are on to the trials. Would you like me to take this part or you?
Yeah, you can take it. I like your voice.
All right. So. Oh, thanks, sweetie. Okay. We've now gone over the case for and against the Memphis Three. Of course, there are other details that are impossible to fit in, so we certainly recommend watching some further series and doing some independent research into the case, as you'll likely come to your own conclusion about each piece of evidence. Now, however, it's time to go over the criminal trials. Starting with Jesse Misskelley, as he was to present in front of a jury first. The jury was made up of 5 men and 7 women, with Jesse represented by attorney Dan Stidham. When he first looked over the case, Dan Stidham claimed that he could immediately see how there were some elements of police mishandling. In his book that only came out around a year and a half ago, Dan describes himself at the time as a young lawyer unaware of its strength and the immutable, unpredictable eddies that would forever change my life and my view of the law.
What a douchebag. I'm sorry. I don't know the man, but that's a pretty douchey way of describing yourself.
Describing the trial that way, you're saying?
Well, he says he's a young lawyer unaware of its strength and the immutable, unpredictable eddies that would forever. Yeah, I guess he's describing the trial.
Could you imagine
yeah. He's
being
saying
a
like
young lawyer and going into all of this?
Yeah. But,
it'd be insane.
Yeah, it would be.
It'd be like the wasn't one of the people on the OJ trial like a new like a fresh attorney who was under the other one? Like that would be ridiculous.
Yes, very stressful. But also, like he says here, like you're immediately thrown into a case that's going to change your entire life immediately and put you up into the history books, basically. So yeah, stressful, but also massively life changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's what lawyers want.
Yeah. Jesse tried to recant his confession, but it did not matter, as the prosecution argued that the jury should instead see Jesse as a man terrified to go to jail and willing to say anything to avoid that fate. Dan stated that the police had a feeling of overwhelming pressure to arrest and solve the case, hence the tunnel vision on Jesse, Damien, and Jason. The defense's argument was that Jesse was scared and felt threatened in the interrogation, and that is why he confessed.
Yeah, I want to also throw in here, again, read the transcripts. There were nothing, and Jesse, I don't think even claims this, that the police threatened him at all. Like there was a case that you referenced, I think, last week where someone did, well, there's many such cases of someone confessing under duress, basically, due to police threats and stuff, like them saying, if you confess, we won't throw the death penalty on you or something like that. There's many such cases of that. Nothing like that happened in this, from what I read through anyway.
Yeah.
There's a quote here from Jesse Miskelly during the trial on the interrogation. He says, "I kept telling Inspector Gitchell and Detective Ridge I didn't know who did it. I just knew of it, what my friend had told me. But they kept hollering at me. They kept saying that they knew I had something to do with it because other people had told them. After I told him what the three boys were wearing, Gary Gitchell told me, was any of them tied up? That's when I went along with him. I repeated what he told me. I said, yes, they were tied up. He asked, what was they tied up with? I told him a rope. He got mad. He told me, God damn it, Jesse, don't mess with me. He said, no, they was tied up with shoestrings. I had to go through the story again until I got it right. They hollered at me until I got it right. So whatever he was telling me, I started telling him back, but I figured something was wrong because if I'd have killed him, I'd have known how I'd done it." Which, yeah, I mean, it's a compelling argument for sure. Like,
that's compelling until he came up with like the whiskey bottle detail.
Yes. Again,
like,
it's so difficult. Oh man, it's so difficult because it does. Again, the police interrogation is suggestive.
Yeah. Defense brought to the stand a social psychologist, Dr. Richard Offshee, to explain the concept of police coercion. This was debated in court, with the prosecution arguing that the jury should not hear about it. Offshee thought the confession came out of concern. It was for the jury to decide. His testimony was eventually allowed, with Offshee saying that Miss Kelly seemed to have been coerced into giving an overall false statement, as his low self-confidence and intelligence made him a susceptible target. The police hadn't beaten up Jesse or abused him in any material way, so the prosecution tried to downplay the coercion as just being a few leading questions. At the end, the jury came back with their answer, guilty on all three charges. He was sentenced to life without parole plus 40 years. This verdict was based largely on his own confessions, as there was no compelling physical evidence linking him to the crime.
Yeah, which again, I will stand on the point.
How is there no physical evidence?
Yeah, I know. It's because the bodies were submerged in water, which is a pretty good way
of you're right.
clearing physical evidence.
And I guess they never found a murder weapon, right?
Well, they found branches and stuff, but again, no like DNA. I'm pretty sure.
That's right. Yeah, it was branches they were supposedly killed with.
Yeah.
Man, how awful. Gosh, it's such a brutal death. I didn't really think about it in the first part, but killing someone with a stick.
Branches, beating them, bludgeoning them. Very, very over the top, brutal.
Yeah.
Which is something that the severity of the crime, it feels so strange that it kind of, it doesn't feel like a first timer kind of thing or a teenager's doing this kind of thing. Like it's the kind of crime or the brutality that I would expect from a serial killer, like someone who's done this a lot.
Or someone who's thought about killing things a lot for a long time and supposedly been a part of animal sacrifices.
Yeah, good point. I don't know. It is very brutal.
Yeah. The prosecutor had hoped that they could use Jesse against Damien and Jason in court, but that didn't go exactly to plan. With Jesse recanting his confession, the prosecution was unable to use it. He also declined testifying against them in their trial, giving up the possibility of some sort of future lenience on his sentencing. The prosecution needed to go about the second trial for Damien and Jason in another way. The trial of Damien and Jason began 2 weeks after Jesse was convicted. Jason's attorney attempted to have them trialed separately, but this was denied. The prosecution was happy about this, and they believed they had a stronger case against Damien as opposed to Jason, and they hoped Jason's association with Damien would assist in leading to a guilty verdict for both of them as opposed to just Damien.
Yeah, they really had very little about Jason, in general. He was really only guilty by association and also, obviously, Jesse's confession, which tied into it.
The confession.
But as I just said, or as the document just said, I should say, Jesse's confession was unable to be used against them. It was barred, basically, as evidence. So there was really nothing on Jason, and I was very surprised that he was held to the same standard as
except
Damien.
for Jesse's account that Jason was there.
Yeah, but again, can't be used in this trial.
Yeah,
So,
can't be used.
insane.
When the defense made their statements, they talked about how, yes, the teenagers were weird, not the same as us, and like different things, but this did not make them murderers, and there was no evidence to suggest that they had murdered the 3 victims. At one point, they tried for a mistrial, as Detective Ridge had a slip of the tongue, essentially saying Jesse had confessed.
Which, as we said, was barred. It wasn't allowed.
Wait, so during the 2 of their trial, Detective Ridge said that Jesse confessed.
It was kind of, so when I was researching it, he didn't necessarily say he confessed, but as he went to say something like, I think the way he said it was, as Jesse said, and then it was immediately struck down as the way he was wording it was kind of telling the jury that it was a...
Everyone was like, up.
We'll read through it right now. I've got the exact quote. So Price says... Price, who is Price? I believe he's the defense attorney.
He's the attorney, right?
Yeah, defense attorney.
DA.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Price is the defense attorney. He says, and he's cross-examining the detective at the moment. So he says, all right, so I guess I'm confused. At the time, you did not take that stick into evidence at the time that y'all recovered the bodies. And then Detective Ridge.
No, sir, I didn't take this stick into evidence until the statement of Jesse Miskelly, in which he said a stick.
Your Honor, move for a mistrial, Your Honor. So he immediately, attorney.
Well, it sounds
Price.
for there like Price was trying to lead a little bit.
Yeah. If you're talking about suggestive or coercive elements, I would say that Price was actually absolutely
mistrial, false start on the offense, first down, penalty. 15 yards. Yeah.
Yes. He didn't. I mean, the detective didn't even say confession or anything along those lines. He basically just said like they took a statement from Jesse Miskelly, but the attorney, Price, immediately heard Jesse Miskelly and was like, that's my key for a mistrial.
Yeah, he didn't. The detective didn't even say anything about that. He said, well, I didn't take the stick into evidence until the statement we got from Jesse. Then I brought it into evidence.
Yes.
He's not even saying that, like, it has anything to do with it. It's like, why'd you bring the stick into evidence? Oh, because Jesse told me that there was a stick. And it's like, no. Like, he's not even saying in relation to the murders, just why he took a stick into evidence.
And that's why the mistrial obviously wasn't
that's why
approved by the judge. Yeah.
The prosecution didn't have a tone. Sorry, it's written in the Australian way.
Is that an Australian way of writing it?
That's an Australian. Yeah, we spell it Ton.
Oh.
Yep. That's wild. The prosecution didn't have a ton of evidence and worked hard at creating a specific picture, particularly of Damien. They put emphasis on the way he dressed and his interests, reading Stephen King novels, listening to metal, wearing trench coats. They also...
Stephen King novels? The Stephen King novels were so popular in the 90s. Come on.
Yeah, but...
Like soccer moms read that
sometimes I feel like I'm too online and I'm like, oh, horror's the only genre that exists. It's the only thing people go with. And the normal people are like, yeah, I'm really into Taylor Swift now. And it's like their whole personality. And I'm like, oh, maybe I am a weird one.
No,
maybe
I'm
odd out.
You're not. Stephen King was mainstream even back then. Well, definitely back then.
Yeah, you're right, I think. They also pointed out that Damien carried knives at his coat. They claimed they found, when they searched his home, books and other materials that they related to occult activities. There were also notebooks and writings that appeared dark and could be tied to violent tendencies. They also found a dog skull in his room. While not directly tied to the murders, some link it to the animal abuse he was accused of participating in, as well as the prosecutor seeing it as a link to possible interest in death. In court, Damien was also seen by some as smug or arrogant. He was confident, defiant, and even blew a kiss to the victims' families, something that was extremely off-putting even if he was potentially innocent.
Yeah, he's
that's
hard
insane.
to like. He's very hard to
blowing
like.
a kiss to the family.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Even if you're like decrying your innocence,
if you're innocent,
and stuff, yeah, that is extremely fucked up. He was doing other things as well, like licking his lips at them, and he was just very smug.
Yeah, maybe he did it.
I mean, the people who say he's innocent say that
I was emotionally manipulated by Kira in the first half of this video and saying that. Let the record show.
No, Kira did a great job. She killed it.
Yeah, but at emotionally manipulating. Yes.
She's good at it.
I'll add that to my resume. Emotionally manipulated Wendigoon.
Thank you, professional gaslighter.
Professional gaslighter.
A big part of the prosecution's case, and possibly the only physical evidence, was a knife found near Damien's house. The knife had serrations on it, like a saw blade. It was thought that it could be consistent with the wounds that were on the victims. They determined the knife could have been thrown and discarded into the lake from a pier that was located behind Damien's trailer. There were suggestions that the knife could have actually been Jason's, but there was no evidence, and instead Damien's ex-girlfriend had testified that it was Damien's knife. She said it was his knife due to the unique compass found on it.
Yeah, so you know knives, there's some knives that have like compasses built into the handle
Built-in
at the very
compass,
bottom.
yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
I figured you'd know.
Yeah. The knife manufacturer testified that the knife found was ultimately missing its compass, though. Top of that, the knife's compass socket matches the central wound on Stevie Branch, which was described as a bite mark in other reporting. The so-called bite mark is actually discussed as proof that the West Memphis Three weren't guilty due to the fact that their teeth didn't match the mark. Yeah. However, it is interesting that the compass slot on the knife matches the bite mark contusion. Wait, what? So they stabbed him so hard. Wait, or they hit him with the hilt of the blade.
Exactly. They hit him with the hilt.
Okay.
They hit the victim with the hilt of the blade and it left a contusion that was then misidentified as a potential bite mark. But it seems like it actually matched the compass slot, basically.
The back of the knife.
I'm not really sure why that wasn't followed up with. I think it might have been discovered too late. Like the bite mark may have been discovered too late.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah.
A man named Dennis Dent, who dated Jason Baldwin's mother for a very short period of time and had lived with the family for a month or two, did claim in the statement that the knife was similar to one he'd seen Jason with and suggested maybe Jason had access to these knives from Damien. It wasn't a smoking gun, however. There wasn't any direct evidence that Damien owned the knife, and there was no DNA evidence or blood on the knife to solidly prove it was involved in the murders. It was a piece of evidence that was compelling yet inconclusive.
I guess if it was thrown in the water behind his caravan park or whatever, which would have wiped away or cleaned away any of the blood. So yeah,
yeah, be too gone. Besides this, one of the main pieces of evidence brought into court was a small bit of blue wax. It had been found on Stevie's shirt and appeared to come from a candle. Investigators found a similar blue wax in a book that they had discovered that belonged to Damien, and in addition to that, Damien's girlfriend was found to own a similar blue candle. They only found traces of the wax at Damien's trailer and no candles. Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Blue
but you
candle
can't
wax.
match it to the exact candle that he owned or the exact wax that he had.
But it was blue candle wax, which isn't the most common substance.
Yeah, how common would blue candle wax realistically be?
Again,
another piece of circumstantial
Yep.
evidence.
There were also fibers, microscopically similar, found on one of the boys' hats that was similar to fibers found in Damien's trailer. They then brought in Dr. Dale Griffiths, a quote cult expert, and this turned out to be pretty powerful for the prosecution. Griffiths saw every part of this case as being connected to a cult ritual. He pointed out that the murders had taken place 4 days after Beltane, a pagan holiday. The day after, May 6th, was also a full moon. He talked about the significance of the murders taking place near water, as this could be used in a cult baptism. There were also the number 3 and its alleged importance in satanic practices. In Christianity, 3 represents the Holy Trinity, and occult or satanic groups tend to invert Christian symbols as an act of defiance or blasphemy. Additionally, in witchcraft, the rule of 3 suggests that whatever energy a person puts into the world returns to them threefold. He also spoke about the importance of blood and life force in these rituals and how those who take the blood want their victim to be as young and innocent as possible. This entire idea of a ritual Murder formed the basis for the supposed motive of the murders, something easily understandable to the jury given the prevalence of satanic panic in media, which we've already discussed.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is that this motive, let's say, it speaks to a level of determination or predetermination that I don't think existed, because as Jesse testified, or as Jesse confessed, they were fooling around in the lake, and then the three boys showed up, and then they just called them over, basically. Like it seemed, even in that particular confession, it seems like a very spontaneous killing.
Yeah, they were just there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they knew that the kids rode their bikes through there. Maybe they were determined that, okay, whoever comes by, we're gonna.
It's a lot to leave up to fate if you're coming at this from a satanic kind of ritualistic
ritual.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's possible that like the
how
kids
often did the boy? We probably don't have evidence for this, but how often did those kids go through there?
Kira, do you know off the top of your head? Do you know off the top of your head? You don't need to.
Yeah,
I don't think that if
anything exactly, but it seems like them going around and on their bikes in the area in general was a very often thing.
Yeah, common occurrence because they lived in the
because if it was every evening, then you could be like, okay, we're gonna wait for them to come down there today.
Yeah, knowing that they're on
and
their
we'll
way.
wave them over. Yeah.
And
possible.
remember, there was that testimony or the accusation from one of the other younger kids who had known the three victims, who said that they would often go to that area to watch homosexual orgies in the woods, basically. Remember that strange claim?
Yeah.
So
I do remember that.
Seems like a hot spot for the kids to kind of, ride through and stuff like that. So, yes, it's possible that the West Memphis Three in Jesse's confession knew that they would ride through there. I don't know.
Yeah. When he was cross-examined, it turned out that Griffiths wasn't exactly a proper doctor. He had filled in a mail order for his credentials to a college that later got shut down, and he never actually took any classes.
That's good enough for me.
There were a few more additional shocking testimonies, which ended up resulting in a guilty verdict. A witness who had previously shared a cell with Jason in prison told the court that Jason had confessed to him. It's a pretty graphic description.
You can take the question then, because the answers are pretty graphic.
Right. Did you have occasion again while you were in the detention facility to ask him, was he involved in the murders of the 3 8-year-olds?
Yes, I think it was like, so this answer is from the witness. Yes, I think it was like the next day. I believe it was the next day.
Can you tell me what was going on? What was happening at the time that occurred?
Well, me and Jason Baldwin were scrapping up the cards to go into our cells for lunch, because they make us go into our cells for lunch. We were scraping up the cards. I said, just between me and you, did you do it? I won't say a word. He said yes, and he went into detail about it.
Were there other people at the table picking cards up at that point?
No, it was just me and Jason.
You said he went into detail. What did he tell you?
Well, he told me how he dismembered the kids. I don't exactly know how many kids. He just said he dismembered them. He sucked and this is graphic for people listening. He sucked the blood from the penis and scrotum and put the balls in his mouth. And then that's the end of the important part of the testimony.
Well, that explains. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, if this guy was so big on like drinking blood and stuff, why didn't he drink the blood of these kids he killed? But there it is. That would tie that together. Oh man, those
horrible
kids,
mental.
Dude.
Yeah, I mean, we lose the fact that
kids.
3 young
8-year-olds,
kids, 8-year-olds were killed
that's so awful.
Before their time. It's awful.
Tragic.
It's so tragic.
And he says that Jason had said this in prison?
Yes, so this is about Jason Baldwin, which is the guy that we have very little about. But yeah, again, this is a case of Jason Baldwin basically also confessing to a witness, which is something that Jesse Miskelly was also often doing.
Which, I mean, like, unless this guy got a plea deal out of it, I don't know why this random guy would lie about it. Jason confronting him and saying that. So it's not looking good for him, if I had to say. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, that's so sad.
Not evidence on its
own, but once again, circumstantial. Yeah. This was vital as the case against Jason was weak, and he had also refused to testify against Damien for a shorter sentence, much like Jesse. Prosecution also brought in 2 girls who apparently overheard Damien talking about the murders at a local sports game, claiming, quote, he killed the 3 little boys, and before he turned himself in, that he was going to kill 2 more, and he already had one of them picked out.
And Damien himself admits to this, that conversation happening, by the way. But he claims that he said it because he knew that they were listening and that he just wanted to kind of like...
Freak him out.
Yeah, freak him out, basically.
Be edgy, yeah.
Yeah.
I did it. I killed those kids on the other edge of town is just like a thing to mess with
so
them,
that's what he claims. But it's still a crazy thing to claim. Like, just
that's a wild
to
thing
that.
to say out of pocket, yeah. When asked by defense about his Wiccan practices, Damien said it just made him closer to nature and that he was definitely not a Satanist and did not believe in human sacrifices.
That's something that Satanists and people who human sacrifice would say. I definitely don't do that.
I'm definitely not those 2 things, yeah. They asked him why he dressed in black, had odd trinkets, had evil tattoos over his knuckles, and he simply replied that he thought it was cool and he felt he looked good in black and there was nothing more to it. Which is possible, but again, circumstantial evidence. Mm-hmm. When the jury came back with their verdict after writing... To clarify, I'm not saying that wearing black and having tattoos is circumstantial evidence. I'm saying that him talking about being a Wiccan and having like symbols and everything... and like supposedly being a part of animal sacrifices, that would be circumstantial evidence, I would say.
Yes.
When the jury came back with their verdict after writing pros and cons for each teenager, which is shown below and shows the jury's thought process about why they found each individual guilty, the families of the boys cheered as Damien and Jason were found guilty. Jason was sentenced to life without parole, and Damien, as his con list was extensively comparative, was sentenced to death. This is all of the important information about the trials. Detractors and people who prescribe innocence to the West Memphis Three will point to the lack of material evidence necessary to convict, and people who believe the trial got it right will point to satanic panic excuses as being a weak distraction to what was actually a relatively compelling case against the 3. However, the trial is just the beginning, and what followed would be a lengthy 20 years of people demanding retrials or pardons, documentaries pushing the innocence of the 3, and many alternative theories for who actually murdered the victims if the 3 were innocent.
Yeah, if you scroll down here, we have the pictures of the pros and cons list that the juries used to determine if they should be held guilty or not. And as you can see, Damien's con list is extensive, and at the bottom, or where is it? There's a mention of him winking at the jury or the parents, basically, and how.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of stuff there. And then Jason's basically is much shorter in comparison because, again, they had very little evidence. There's the jailhouse confession, Damien being his best friend, which is not enough evidence for me. And then the fighter match and low self-esteem. Yeah, I can see why they, said Damien was guilty, but I really feel like there needed to be way more evidence on the Jason part.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we come to kind of the alternative theories and what people who claim that the West Memphis Three are
if it wasn't those 3, who was it?
They kind of throw around these ideas instead.
And there's a lot of strange things that happened after the trials in the case too, so...
Yeah, a lot of strange things. So I'll take John Mark Byers and you can take Terry Hobbs, which are the main ones that we're going to talk about. So John Mark Byers. Do you remember John Mark Byers, the father of Christopher Mark Byers? We need to circle back to him to begin talking about the alternative theories. It's easy to see strange behavior and understand that, he just lost his stepson, but some things were definitely a little too strange. During the trials, HBO... creators of such hits as Game of Thrones, were working on a documentary about the case. During filming, John gave the crew a knife that had blood on it. Oh, by the way, this documentary that HBO produced, it's part of a trilogy, or it is a trilogy now, called Paradise Lost, and that's what a lot of people point to as being kind of the most compelling case for the West Memphis Three's innocence. But I would argue that there's a lot of bias and things left out in those movies that have kind of portrayed the situation as them being like railroaded by the judicial system and them being innocent. Other people would argue that it's a completely compelling recounting of events, and they are innocent, whatever. HBO kind of had an incentive, though, in my opinion, to push an innocent bias to the retelling of the events, because obviously
sells better.
Exactly, it sells better. They wanted to make a documentary. Like, if it's just a documentary about the case and they're guilty or whatever, that's not gonna blow up on the internet. And it did blow up on the internet. Paradise Lost is a very successful trilogy and really pushed them to their freedom. He said that John Mark Byers had never used the knife, but the crew quickly handed it over to the police when they discovered the blood. His story quickly changed, saying that he actually had used the knife and forgot he accidentally cut himself with it, so the blood was his. This was after he first said he did not know how blood ended up on the knife. He blamed the trials and the stress surrounding their lives for his forgetful memory. That's something that's terrifying to me, because I have awful memory even without the stress of a trial and stuff, so I'm screwed if I'm ever on the police investigation.
Yes, but would you hand the crew a knife that has blood on it? Why did he do that? That's insane.
Well,
why would you be like, here's the knife.
Here's the murder weapon. it's a
like,
yeah. No,
oops. Yeah.
I don't buy
How
that.
clumsy me.
Yeah. When tested, the blood was consistent with the DNA of John Mark and his son, Christopher Mark Byers. John was also often noted for his strange behavior, and his anger was very theatrical. Which, whatever. People are weird.
It'd be really
everyone
funny.
is weird in this story.
I mean, not funny, but it'd be kind of funny if, like, John had, like, killed someone completely unrelated to the case.
Completely different.
Like, he just murdered someone. Like, he was a murderer, but not this murderer.
But it was his blood. The DNA was of his own type, as well as his son's type. It didn't stop there. Years after the murders, it was discovered in photos that marks on the boys appeared to be bite marks. We've discussed this. It was concluded the bite marks didn't match any of the three teenage boys, but many found it strange that John Mark had his teeth removed in 1997. So they point to this as, he got his entire teeth removed in 1997.
There's actually some, interesting videos of John Mark Byers talking to supporters of the West Memphis Three who are kind of questioning him about his teeth and when he got them removed and stuff. And he's very defensive. And at one point he actually like pulls out his fake teeth to like hand it to them because they ask him to get it tested, and he kind of refuses. And it's just very theatrical and very, he's trying to not intimidate them, but, like, here's my teeth, and be kind of gross, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, off-putting. It's an off-putting kind of conversation.
Yeah, some interesting videos on that.
So those people, the West Memphis Three innocent club, points to him removing his teeth as a sign of him being guilty, and if he had his original teeth, it would have matched the bite marks.
Oh,
because they keep asking, why don't you give bite impressions to get it tested?
So
and
weird. That's such a weird. Why did you just randomly get removed? Did he have like a problem or something?
Well, yeah. First, he said it was because of medication that he took that ruined his teeth, but then he also said that he had been experiencing dental problems for years. I mean, I've known plenty of people that, especially when you get older, like there's plenty of people who have replaced their teeth with like dentures and shit.
Yeah, it's just kind of strange, those interactions, when you kind of watch them. It's a bit, just a bit weird.
Yeah, but okay, counterpoint. Like if he's being harassed by the West Memphis Three is innocent club a lot, and I have seen this firsthand. These people are very aggressive online about their opinions for sure. It goes both ways though. But yeah, I could see them absolutely harassing people that they even remotely suspect are guilty. And I'm sure, like, again, you got to remember these guys, these people lost their children and stuff and have been dealing with this as well.
So
for
they
multiple
would
decades.
also be upset. Yeah.
Yes. So
both
I could
parties
absolutely
are very
see,
emotional about their position. Yeah.
I could absolutely see them being
As with
accused that
anything.
you are your son's killer, being a very upsetting situation that you can't escape it. So yeah, but both
So you're
sides.
like, here, take him to the police. Here's my teeth.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So death also seemingly followed John Mark Byers, as in 1996, Melissa Byers, his wife, and Christopher's mother died from unknown reasons. The subsequent investigation by the
It
coroner-
would have been bite marks, would it?
Yeah, she had bite. Yeah, well, it was the
got
year
bit to
before he
death.
lost his teeth. He removed his teeth, so maybe. Maybe he was hiding
that's
this
true,
murder.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. The subsequent investigation by the coroner was unsuccessful, and undetermined was left on her cause of death. It happened in her sleep while she lay next to John Mark. He was investigated and questioned over what happened on the night, but the investigation was inconclusive and no charges were laid against him.
Well, hold on. If my kid was dead and I had people for years be like, "Did you kill your kid? Did you actually kill your kid?" And then my wife dies, and then someone says that to me again, I would probably throw my teeth at him. Like that. The reaction seems more reasonable now.
Yeah, like all of these families went through it. Like it's such a horrible situation.
Yeah.
I would probably go crazy as well if I had a kid. And then, I don't know. John Mark also, I don't believe that there was any foul play. People do just genuinely die for unknown reasons in their sleep. That is a thing that happens, especially when you're up there in age. And he reported the murder. Well, okay, that is a young age. Yeah, that's odd. All right. But regardless, he reported the death like an hour after it happened. He woke up and discovered she was dead and then reported it. So it's a very short amount of time. Don't know. I don't think there's any foul play, but it's up to you. Yeah. John Mark Byers had been adamant that the West Memphis Three were the murderers. However, he has since changed his tune and now believes them to be innocent. As for his own involvement, he has even less material evidence linking him to the murders than the West Memphis Three. And he also has a solid alibi as he was at home with his wife, now deceased, or at work at the pawn shop during the time of the murders. So in my eyes, he's got a better alibi than the West Memphis Three, and he's also
I don't think he did it.
Yeah, he's also got less evidence tying himself to it. That's always what's so strange to me about the crew that believe he's innocent. They're so happy to say that the West Memphis Three are innocent, but then they very aggressively lay the blame at people where there is even less evidence available pinning them to the crimes. They'll like finger them basically and say that they did it when there's even less evidence. It seems a bit hypocritical, but whatever. Do you want to take Terry Hobbs?
Yeah, I'll take him. So let's jump to Stevie's stepfather, Terry, who came under heavy scrutiny in 2007. A breakthrough came in the case when a hair was discovered around one of the shoelace knots used to bind the victims. This hair did not match Damien, Jesse, or Jason. It was found to be not inconsistent with Terry. Also, another hair at the crime scene led to one of Terry's friends, a man named David Jacoby. This wasn't a pinpoint accurate discovery, as it could basically be matched to about 1.5% of the population in Terry's case and 7% for Jacoby. While not a smoking gun, the hair could not have come from any of the three teenage boys. Apparently, Terry and David were also together in the area around the time of the murders. But Terry and Stevie did also live together, which would likely cause their DNA and hair to be all over each other's belongings naturally.
Yeah.
Again, it was potentially compelling evidence, but not something that would make a case. Yeah, if you did like a microanalysis of my clothes, it's got my wife's stuff on it. It's got the dogs. It's got people who've been at the house for a while. Like, it's just...
Yeah, this isn't very... I don't think it's very...
Whose shoestrings were they tied up with, too? It was their own shoes,
yes,
right?
It was their own shoestrings.
Kid shoes.
And remember, each one of them had different knots. Like, they used different knots to bind each individual.
Yeah. So I'd say... People. The hair doesn't do anything for me. If it is or isn't. It's also like unrelated, but you've heard the stuff lately where they're like, "Oh, we confirmed who Jack the Ripper is." Have you seen those tweets and stuff like that?
A lot of people have been tweeting at me that we need to do an update on that.
Yeah, well, they did not confirm anything. They did a mitochondrial DNA test, and they found a descendant of one of the suspects who is not eliminated by the DNA test. And the DNA from Jack the Ripper, quote unquote, that they're using is a handkerchief that some family in Great Britain had passed down for years, saying, "Oh yeah, your great uncle said that he got this off Jack the Ripper because it has some blood on it."
That's like compelling.
It is double layers of like that doesn't prove anything, and everyone's like 100% DNA match confirms Jack the Ripper. Yeah.
It is pretty cool, though. I will say that it is pretty cool that we have advanced technology far enough where we can take something from that long ago and still accurately determine the DNA on it. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't mean anything. I don't think
it doesn't mean anything.
Not at all conclusive. 100% confirmed, though. I'm on board. It was him.
Absolutely 100%. It's this guy, even though it's not. So a quote from David Jacoby said, "I did walk near where they had found the kids with Terry Hobbs, but I didn't wear hats back then. My hair could have blown around anywhere." Yeah.
I mean, he was also just a visitor to the house. So again, like
It could have, DNA's,
and not conclusive enough for me at all, unless it's an exact match to their exact hair, and they can determine that the hair was left there basically on the day of the time of the day or whatever when the murders happened. Not enough for me.
We know Terry dropped Pam off at her work at 5 p.m. and drove through the neighborhood to try and spot Stevie. After John Mark called the police, search efforts started around 8:30, and then he went and picked up Pam at 9. But between those few unaccounted for hours, no witness saw Terry, nor did he provide a credible alibi. His neighbors have also insinuated that he could have been the murderer. As Terry said, he did not see the young boys that afternoon, but his neighbor alleged that he had heard him with them around 6:30. Terry and Pam later divorced, which also pushed Pam and her family to come forward with more strange notes on Terry. They said Terry had been seen at the time when the boys were found washing clothes at strange times, and noted it was weird that he prioritized doing the laundry while his stepson had just been found murdered.
Apparently he cleaned the house like top to bottom, which that is definitely a bit odd, I will say.
I don't know. People do weird things when they're grieving. Again, not bulletproof or anything.
Yeah, I mean, just to me, that is a little bit odd. I don't know.
They said that his daughter, Amanda, told them that Terry had sexually assaulted her and Stevie. Pam also made a discovery 10 years after the murders of a small pocket knife in Terry's nightstand. The pocket knife had belonged to Stevie, a gift from another family member. Apparently, his pocket knife never left Stevie's side. Pam often wondered where it had gone and why it was not found with him. His excuse was that he had confiscated it before the murders.
So Terry's excuse was that he had confiscated it before the murders. But still, why would he not then give that pocket knife back to her within that 10-period time frame? Like, how did it take 10 years to discover that?
Okay, so let me process that again. Amanda said that Terry sexually assaulted her.
Yeah, that's different. That's like a completely separate point.
Yeah.
It's from
And then 10 years later...
Mm-hmm. Well, no.
That there was a small pocket knife.
Yes, 10 years after the murder, yeah. Pam, the wife of Terry and the mother of Stevie, discovered the small pocket knife in Terry's nightstand.
Well, Stevie's dead. Well, hold on, Stevie's dead, so that's why I never gave the pocket knife back.
Well, yeah, but like...
He just kept one of Stevie's pocket knives.
Pam found it weird that it was never found on him when they were discovered and they tragically died, and only found it later in Terry's nightstand. And she found that a bit strange that he never came and gave it to her or told her or anything like that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Terry's excuse was that he had confiscated it before the murders.
Okay.
It is a tad weird. I will say that I can see why people are sus on this guy.
I can see why he may have, like, in the moment when everything was happening, not thought about it. But if there was a conversation possibly between Pam where she said, "I wonder where it went," would that not jog your memory to say, "Oh, I took it and it's over here"?
Well, let's say that she never brought it up. It's very weird to me that he never 10 years is a long time for it just to be in a nightstand, and him did he just never go in his nightstand and never see it again until that point?
Possibly. Sometimes there are things that you just pop in a drawer and you completely forget about with all the other shit piled on top. So
I don't know.
So
it's weird to me.
However, detractors point to this information only coming out after a bitter divorce with Pam, and also the fact that the only evidence available is her hair strands is hair strands that would have been readily available in their home as possible reason for why Terry isn't as compelling as he may seem, at least not conclusively so. Alongside that, the 3 separate knots on the victims and different wound patterns indicate to many that there were 3 different killers as opposed to 1. The lack of motive is something the detractors also point to, However, those who believe he may be guilty point to the possibility of Terry being caught by the boys having gay sex at Robin Hood Hill with his friend, which, as discussed last episode, was potentially a gay hookup spot. Simply conjecture with no tangible evidence supporting the motive. That is really funny to be like, well, if you didn't kill your son, you're gay. Like, if nothing else.
No, it's adding them up. It's you did kill your son and you're gay.
Because you are gay.
Yeah, exactly.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
So that's the common, like, people who believe that he's guilty have come up with that motive. I've seen, like, that's why he was having gay sex with his friend, and that's why both their hairs were on the bodies. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's definitely more compelling than the first guy with the weird teeth or whatever. But
but neither of them are compelling, I wouldn't say. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say. Not unless, like, I think the police also agree. Otherwise, they would have done an investigation. Although I guess you don't really do an investigation, right? If the courts have already determined the outcome of the case as the other boys being guilty, I guess I have no incentive to. All right, what to believe? With all of this strange evidence coming out over the years, many have changed their views on the West Memphis Three. Pam, the mother of Stevie, said there should be another trial, a proper fair one for the teenagers. If they were found guilty again, great, they'll remain in prison. But if they weren't, they should be released. Even John Mark, who once said he wanted to do to the teenage boys what they did to the kids, has changed his tune as well. He said he believed that they were innocent and that he would lead the charge for their release. He also openly said he blamed Terry Hobbs and wrote down all of the reasons he thought Terry was guilty, pointing specifically to Terry having no alibi and his inconsistent or false statements. And Vicky Hutchison, which was the lady who said that she had spent the evening with Damien,
insane one,
Damien and Jesse, and who was instrumental in the investigation as the on-the-ground reporter at the witch orgy. Well, in 2003, she recanted her statement and said plainly that she lied. Every word she said had been a lie. She was supposedly scared that her child Aaron would be taken away from her if she did not comply and go along with the story. And in an interview, she said she noticed while at the police station that officers had photos of Damien, Jesse, and Jason hanging on the wall, and that they would use them as dart targets, indicating a strong prejudice for the three. But I mean, that prejudice would have existed if they thought that he was guilty.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. While Terry was suspicious, John Mark believed that they were innocent, and Pam was unsure. The others still silently believed that the three were guilty, including Steve Branch Sr., Stevie's biological father, and Todd and Dana Moore. Those who believe that Damien, Jason, and Jesse are innocent have very loud voices and are fueled by a sense of injustice, and also fueled by documentaries that sum up the entire facade as an investigation fueled by satanic panic, and also the lack of evidence. And they could have pressured those into changing their opinions, much like how the police hypothetically pressured Jesse Miskelly into confessing for something he may or may not have done. But I think that just the more likely conclusion is that there just isn't enough evidence to lean one way or the other. I really don't know why people are so gung-ho on either side of the argument.
Yeah, I mean, I understand being gung-ho if you think that an innocent man's locked up. I get that. But at the same time, like, for all the circumstantial evidence being presented to me is they probably did it, but I don't know if it's enough to convict someone on the information that's presented. But as a non-legal personal opinion, they probably did it.
Yeah, so you're leaning towards they probably
I think they did.
it.
I think the whiskey bottle, I think the description, I think like 2 or 3 outside people, like other prisoners who were just around these guys saying that they did it, like, I don't know. Feels like a lot.
There's more additional stuff that we had to leave out.
I don't know if I would convict them over it if I was a jury, but
no, I don't think I would.
I don't think you could. Yeah, there's nothing conclusive. Yeah.
So free from death row, with all of the DNA evidence that has come to light since their conviction, as well as the technological advancements in forensics since the 90s, the same technological advancements that have determined that Jack the Ripper killer has been found.
Of course.
It was argued that a retrial made logical sense due to the prevailing public doubt surrounding the case, as well as extreme pressure from public groups fueled by online speculation and the trilogy of well-received documentaries called Paradise Lost that aim to interview people connected with the case and offer a counter to the court's opinion. But if they did go through a retrial, even with new evidence behind them, the future would have been uncertain. The prosecution and the Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas. Why is it Arkansas?
I do that.
Why did I say that?
I always think that, like, my
Kansas.
my brain has to go through like a mental note of what I'm actually reading.
Well, Kansas is a state in the U.S. and Arkansas is the same, but it is spelled just AR than Kansas.
Yeah.
So it's pronounced Arkansas.
Okay. The prosecution in the Arkansas legal system could be risking a very expensive payout as well as national embarrassment and scrutiny if the three were found to be wrongfully convicted, which of course that's not a good enough reason.
It's not a reason to keep them locked up.
Yeah,
sure.
but also that's
it's just saying that the trial, like you may be fighting an uphill battle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why, like, the prosecution and the legal system is incentivized to look the other way and keep them locked away. In 2011, Eccles, Baldwin, and Miss Kelly were allowed to enter into a special plea deal with the prosecutors. This would let them claim their innocence, as in claim that they were innocent, but acknowledge that if they had a retrial, the state would most likely convict them due to prevailing evidence. This is called an Alford plea, and it is served as a way to avoid the retrial, which could have ended disastrously for either side. So this was kind of like a weird best of the worst situation for both sides, where they just kind of
you can enter into a plea deal where you're found innocent and don't have to go through a trial?
Yeah, apparently.
It was kind of like, it was both sides of the party acknowledging that if they went into a trial, they both had way too much to lose. But they were in this sticky situation where there was so much evidence, not evidence.
So much doubt, yeah.
So they let him out.
It's like they can say they're innocent, and that's why we're going further. They have very loud voices on their innocence, especially Damien. But technically, the state still says they did it.
Yeah, the state still maintains that they're guilty, and they still served as guilt. Like, they're still criminals under the eyes of the court system, because even though they were let out, they're still convicted felons, basically.
Interesting.
Basically been paroled.
Huh, that's weird.
It's a very interesting one. I've never seen it used before. I don't know how common it is. Yeah. Seems really, really weird. I personally would have way preferred a retrial so that we could actually get to the bottom of this and find justice. But yeah, this seems like not in the best interest for the public, but whatever. So the three were credited with their time served and thus released back into the public in 2011, with Jesse and Damien being on board with the plea deal. It took Jason a while to come around, as he felt that this wasn't justice for them and that they weren't truly absolving themselves of what he considered an unjust verdict, and nor were they truly finding out who murdered the victims. Which, yeah, I agree with. He'd grown accustomed to prison because, again, like, if they do go through the retrial and they find them innocent, then this would also incentivize the police to then reopen the investigation and try to actually track down who killed them. Then they would be following up on things like Terry Hobbs. And if you remember the first episode, there was the African-American man in the Bojangles restaurant who was covered in blood and mud within like a mile of the murder scene. Like, they would have followed up on that stuff, hopefully.
Yeah.
So a lot. Yeah. I wish it had gone to a retrial. He had grown accustomed. This is Jason. He had grown accustomed to prison and had managed to build a life there. And he also didn't want to walk out with the guilty verdict still looming over his head in the public's eyes. In the end, he did not take the deal for himself, but for Damien, who had sat on death row for 18 long years. Damien thanked Jason during the press conference for practically saving his life, and they both hugged while everyone in the room clapped. Reddit moment. Eccles on his deteriorating health on death row. This is a quote from Damien Eccles. One of the most important and biggest things is that I was losing my eyesight due to the fact that I haven't seen sunlight in almost a decade. I was also showing signs of having pre-diabetes and was having kidney difficulties due to being severely beaten at one point. I have had a heart palpitation since I was in my early teenage years that grew worse due to the stress of prison life. I was developing arthritis in my hips and knees due to having... I know. I just like saying arthritis. I hear it said that way. And these due to having lived on concrete for almost 20 years and sleeping on a concrete slab. So yeah, he also said that he was forced to eat with his hands, which I don't think is a true statement. The campaign for innocence was fueled by a lot of powerful people, interestingly enough. This doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't a just cause or that there aren't compelling reasons for it to occur, but it is a potential answer for why the plea was even possible in the first place. A lot of celebrities were involved, which have been controversial. Musicians in the metal scene like Metallica, Pearl Jam, Black Flag, Marilyn Manson, and the Dixie Chicks. Is Dixie Chicks in metal?
No, they're country.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, shouldn't have looped it there. Unless they've taken a very drastic turn since the last time I heard them.
And actors like Johnny Depp, Winona Ryder, and also producer Peter Jackson all voiced their support for the three men and even some helped fund their legal efforts. So it's no surprise why this really blew up in the way that it did in terms of people believing that they were innocent. If they were guilty or not is still controversial and debated, and without a trial or without further evidence, it's impossible to definitively feel like justice was found. Do you want to take this last chapter?
Yeah, I'll take it. So, request for DNA. Though now released, the West Memphis Three, or at least Damien Echols, have still been pretty vocal about their alleged innocence, continuing to seek new genetic testing of DNA from old crime scene evidence. DNA that could not be recovered from the crime scene due to old data technology. Technology has come such a long way that retesting the evidence would lead to new discoveries and possibly even lead to the West Memphis Three being found totally innocent and a new suspect fingered. 2022, the request to retest the evidence by Echols was denied on the fact that he is no longer in prison. Echols then took his request to the Supreme Court, saying that denying the testing simply because he is no longer incarcerated impedes justice. He has done this with the support of the Innocence Project. Just under 2 years later, Echols was successful with the Supreme Court deciding 4-3 to reverse the previous decision of the lower courts and allow the further testing. Quote from Echols, "This is a monumenta. We appreciate the Arkansas Supreme Court giving this ruling and hope we can now once and for all solve this case, clear our names, and find the person responsible for carrying out these horrendous crimes."
So people point to this like, them, or at least Echols, desperately trying to get the DNA retested and stuff as proof that they're innocent. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like what's he realistically gonna do? Is he gonna say, now that he's out, is he gonna say, no, you guys don't test it? Like, obviously not, right?
Going all the way to the Supreme Court to fight, it's a pretty.
He's being pushed,
good.
but he's being pushed by special interest groups like the Innocence Project. Like, there's a lot of people now backing behind.
If I killed these kids and I got out years later and they were like, "No, you have to fight for blood," I'd be like, "Oh, I'm actually quite sick. Oh, sorry, I broke my leg. I can't make it today," or just leave. I would find something.
But that's kind of like what the other two have done. I mean, Jason has also backed it a little bit, but Jesse Miskelly is completely out of the picture by this point, I think.
Jesse's mentally ill. Like, of course he's not going to be like a spokesperson for the crime thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, he pretty much disappeared and is doing his own private thing. Jason actually did, I think I might have wrote this later, he opened up his own non-for-profit, which later closed, which was about helping people who were have injustice.
Also convicted?
Yeah, convicted.
Yeah, wrongfully convicted.
And if you kind of research him a little bit, he does tweet a lot about he kind of directly says, "To who killed those boys, we will find you," sort of thing. And then Damien has been the most vocal. And there was
what's his last name?
Jason Baldwin. Jason Baldwin.
Echols.
Baldwin.
That's okay. Continue.
Damien Echols also did one of those Reddit posts like Ask Me Anything. And I remember reading that someone said, asked him about him being the main vocal point for the three boys, and he basically said he just felt like he needed to take it on and drive to find who did it and prove their innocence, sort of thing. So it's interesting.
Okay, but let me paint it this way: if Damien is the killer or one of the killers, and he was the figurehead of the killings when it occurred, and a lot of his motive and stuff like that was that he wanted attention, perhaps. And he wanted to be like a Charles Manson style figure, then that does fall in line with then once you are free, trying to stay in the limelight as much as possible. And in this case, to do that is to just create like a social movement out of it by begging for the DNA to be retested and things like that. Obviously, if he is the killer, then that's obviously going to be a bad move long term, but perhaps he just wants attention in the short term. He is a weird dude. I don't know. I don't know how to feel. I mean, I get it. I get why people think that this makes them innocent. If you're desperately pushing for it, it is a very weird thing to do if you are the killer. But I don't think it's enough to rule them out either.
Okay, so I think I found Damien Eccles' Twitter.
He has an Instagram as well. That's quite.
Is he like the martial artist guy?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I found his Twitter.
No way. His profile picture is him with like a, what do you call that stick?
A staff, a bow staff.
A bow staff. Yeah.
And he does like martial arts training, but he has a Patreon.
Oh.
And you go to the Patreon and he says creating magic and art, but it's magic with a K, so it's like kind of the occultist, side of magic or whatever. So he's still into all that. And about like paganism and like arts and stuff.
Yeah, it's called High Magic or something like that. And it's about...
Interesting. It's about magic, yeah.
Yeah, and also how he was very into all that in prison and death row.
Makes sense.
He has a Patreon. He has... How many tiers does he have? He's got up to he has a $450 tier.
Oh my God. It's sold
pledge
out
at this
too.
level.
It's sold out.
what if it is like pledge at this level and I'll confess?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll send you a written confession.
Cover all the practices and you get for the 450 tier you get private tutoring and whatever it is. So it's like buying it's like buying an instructor. Yeah, if that was still available, we get him for an episode.
I think we could just get him on. Honestly, I was thinking about trying it.
We probably could, but I would feel bad after saying things like I think they probably might have done it, but maybe not.
Bad.
I don't know. I'm just a guy.
We'd be able to ask them though directly. I think it would be interesting.
Well, what are they going to say? They're going to be like,
"No,
you know what?
Sorry.
Since you asked, yes, it was me."
No,
Since
I don't mean to ask them like if you did it, because obviously that's not going to work. Maybe if we spring it on them quick enough, maybe they'll slip up. But ask them about the investigation, about the case, any like
the effects of the specifics of it and stuff like that. Yeah. They would be the most knowledgeable in the world about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
His Patreon is successful as hell though. By the way,
he seems very successful. Yeah.
4,300 members. I don't know how to feel about this, given his popularity stems from a very dark place. I would say a dark subject.
Well, I mean, maybe he's really good at magic and martial arts.
Well, he definitely is. I mean, I can see from the profile picture alone, his stance is perfect. But like. Yeah, there's still the chance that he is guilty again, and it feels a bit weird. I don't know.
There's a Jason Baldwin with a Bored Ape Yacht Club profile pic, and it'd just be really funny if like they got off of a life sentence and got really into crypto. Like
yeah, push a meme coin immediately. I mean, if you did get released now, that's probably the first thing you'd do for sure. Is pull a Hawk tour. Also, if you do look up Charles Baldwin. On Twitter, Charles J. Baldwin. It's him on Twitter, and he is ripped. Fucking shredded.
Charles J. Baldwin?
Yeah, Charles J. Baldwin. He's shredded, dude. Prison did him a favor. I can see why he didn't want to leave.
Oh man, he is buffed up, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good call right there.
This is definitely him.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is him. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yep. So life after death, the final little chapter here. What have Damien, Jason, and Jesse done after prison? Jesse has kept an extremely low profile, staying out of the public eye almost entirely. There are some reports that Jesse is now a mechanic and he spends this time or his free time with his family.
Can I just add here, sorry to interrupt you. I did see that he did have a arrest.
Oh no.
After prison, but I think it was not. Sorry, let me just double check it.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
I'll keep reading while you look it up. Jason has been involved in criminal justice reform, co-founding a non-profit that Kira talked about before, and it has since shut down. However, Damien has released multiple books such as Life After Death and continued to be the loudest voice of the three, continuing to proclaim their innocence. He is also deeply entwined in spiritual practices and magic with a K at the end, which he says helped him get through prison. There's also, this isn't in the document, but I'm pretty sure he had a Kickstarter almost immediately after he left prison to write a book And I think there was drama around that because he didn't end up delivering it or something. He didn't end up delivering the rewards. That's not even relevant really, but it's just another kind of point against him in terms of lying and stuff. So figured I'd include it. There have been so much media about the West Memphis Three, movies, documentaries, and books. From the controversially convicted criminals themselves, sleuths highly interested in the case, Hollywood producers, and even the law professionals involved. Notably, Dan Stidham, who was silent for a long period of time, released a book at the end of 2023 about his involvement in the case and his belief in the innocence of the three men.
Okay, so I just double checked, so like quickly circling back. So he was arrested in 2017. It seems he was driving without a license, no proof of insurance, and driving with one or no headlights. So nothing serious, but he was arrested again. Yeah,
that's very low stakes comparatively.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Tragically, Christopher Byers' parents have both since passed away, and John Mark died in a car accident in 2020. Pam has continued to question who the real killer of the boys are, and Michael's parents have kept away from the spotlight. Without answers and with many different questions and many different voices arguing one way or the other about whether or not the West Memphis Three are guilty, we can only hope that Steve Edward Branch, Christopher Mark Byers, and James Michael Moore are able to eventually receive the justice that they are owed. And that's it. That's the entire case in as much detail as we can possibly fit into these episodes. I feel like both episodes kind of paint both sides pretty accurately at this point in time, give a pretty compelling list of evidence for and against their innocence. And it's really, we said this a million times, but it's just up to you guys really listening. Like, you've got to kind of make your own opinion on this, I'm afraid. I'm kind of with Isaiah on this one. If you want to just sum up your thoughts again, Isaiah. It's hard.
Of all the people mentioned, they are the most likely to have done it, but I don't know for a fact that they have done it. And regardless of what I think there was also not enough evidence to convict them.
Yeah.
I think most of it was circumstantial and off the bat.
Exactly what I think.
So even if I have suspicions that they might be guilty, I don't think they should be convicted in court because it is certainly not beyond reasonable doubt.
Yes, so. Exactly. There's not enough hard evidence to determine their guilt. So I don't.
It is well within reasonable doubt. Yeah.
I think it's completely fine to think that they are guilty, but in a courtroom setting, it's a completely different burden of proof. I will say again, to sum it up, bad police investigation, a lot of things that they did incredibly wrong that led to a lot of doubt being placed on the investigation and suspects and things like that. Could have done a way better job there. That would have been nice if they had done that. And also, like you just said, not enough proof to convict. That's my final opinion.
Yeah.
Man, tragic case though. Very, very, very tragic case. Very sad that three young boys lost their lives in the way that they did. And we don't have a definitive answer. It's always the worst kind of cases. Kira, what do you think?
I'm in the same boat, really. Like, I've been hearing about this case for years, and it seems like every time I look into it, I find more information that makes me question everything. So yeah, I don't have a definitive opinion if they did it or not, because I can't be too sure. But I'm interested to see with this new approval of DNA testing, what comes out of that. I think that's definitely something that I will keep my eye on. And yeah, like you said, I just really hope that they find the justice that they desperately deserve. So it's very, very tragic.
Agreed. It would be interesting if the DNA test results come back and it was also the Jack the Ripper killer as well. It's linked to that guy.
Yeah.
Who is he? Who is the new Jack the Ripper killer? Was it? It
was a barber. He was a Polish barber who like immigrated to Britain, I think.
I feel like we talked about him then, because I distinctly remember like a Polish.
He was one of the suspects, I think, but it was always like, oh well, like this family said that, what was it? They found a descendant of the barber and tested her DNA, and like it was mitochondrial match to like a handkerchief of blood that a family said had come from their uncle, who was a barkeeper, who said that a man who he believed to be Jack the Ripper came in and got blood on, or something like that. So it was like they tested a handkerchief that they did not know for a fact was his, Jack the Ripper's blood, and then found the ancestor of one of the suspects, and the two DNAs did not exclude. It's the same thing where it's like so many % of the population have the same mitochondrial, and after
you're gonna run into that problem.
It gets weird.
You're gonna run into that problem with testing old DNA like that. Is just not strong enough to really pinpoint exact matches, probably. So you've got to deal with like this matches 10% of the population, which does narrow it down. So that is kind of good, but also it's not enough to convict. That's going to do it for this episode of Red Thread. Thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate your support. Let us know what you guys want us to hit next time. We're taking suggestions from the audience. So please leave comments below. Really want to see what you guys want us to talk about. Would love to know. Official.men for merch and things like that, and early access to the show. Really appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you, Kira, for joining us for this one. Really appreciate your hard work. The 50 pages of this case.
Thank you for making this show exist.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
We don't get to say thank you enough.
Thanks for doing all of the work and us reaping the benefits. It means a lot.
No, you guys are great. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Isaiah, for joining us. As always.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll see you next time, guys. Stay red.
Bye.
Stay thread.
Bye.